Prof, o batla go projecta something o na le USB. Prof, there is email USB.
Presentation. This presentation is there.
I think I'll email le yona.
Yeah, if he's got it on the.
So bahleli kahle, right? Just give it 2 more minutes. Sifuna everybody to
Sengisho babonisa ukuthi bahlala kuphi ama-guest wethu.
Who else needs to come to the front? Prof Edith, Prof Derek, Mr. Swan. I gave. Okay, yeah. Laba bazuza phambili mani babizi. Yeah, la phambili Prof Swan no Prof Derek, Mr. Swan.
Umuntu ufaswana uhleli lapha gangster phela leya. Ngicela umtshela ahlalele.
Laba then izothi mabaqeda ngibese bahlala phansi laba babizi.
Usipho naye melazela phambili please wazi usokolisa. Usipho sisokolisa. Mr. Naresega khona with the community, not yet. With number. Okay, insurance bakhona. 1, 2. Good morning, colleagues. Molweni, Sanbonani, Jambo. Thank you so much for making the time to be with us this morning. I'm just going to wait for the room to settle down because we're about to start. See some few people coming in. Comrades, the space, please feel free. There's an open seat right in front. Yes, you with the pink jacket. There's space right here, my brother. Come. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to the University of South Africa. My name is Zandi Khadebe, and I bring you greetings from the Department of Political Sciences with collaboration with the Thabo Mbeki School. Of course, they will introduce themselves officially, but I just want to welcome you and perhaps take this moment to thank both my colleagues at the Department of Political Science as well as my colleagues from the TM School for making this necessary conversation possible for us this morning, and mostly to also include members of the community, because as academics in academia, we have, tendencies of speaking amongst each other, echoing each other's voices without the critical voice of the community. Colleagues, as we begin this important conversation on elections in the context of the Government of National Unity, I'd like to frame my opening on the decolonial lens, which is inspired by thinkers like Frantz Fanon and Ernest Wamba Diawamba, African decolonial thinkers. Ernest Wamba Diawamba, in his seminal work, which is titled Beyond Elite Politics of Democracy in Africa, reminds us that African democracy must transcend the narrow politics of the elites, in that the political parties and figures that often replace or replicate colonial power structures have become, the new sort of colonizers in a way. He says that true emancipation for Africa requires the dismantling of these closed systems and creating political spaces where popular participation and collective decision-making take precedence over domination by the few. Of course, South Africa does come from a very long tradition of a one-party state. I don't know, maybe we can have a conversation this morning whether the GNU represent what Wamba Diawamba is bemoaning against African democracy. Frantz Fanon, on the other hand, in his seminal work, The Pitfalls of National Consciousness, cautions against national liberation movements that simply replace one elite with another, thereby perpetuating exclusion and oppression rooted in colonialism. His critique challenges us to reconsider how power is imagined and executed, whether it remains an instrument of domination or is used to serve transformation into a practice of cooperation and shared responsibility. Is this what the GNU is representing to some extent? I don't know. Our panelists will, I suppose, enlighten us to that effect. Elections play a vital role for civic participation in any democracy, and they often operate, however, within a colonial context, or they bring a colonial legacy that define power mainly through domination, and instead of allowing popular citizenry and popular sovereignty. He also argues that, true dismantling of these colonial legacies demands that we think beyond elections. It demands that we center ordinary people when you think about power, not necessarily the powerful elite. He talks about using elections to engage politically and to imagine a political engagement that centers on collective liberation and reparative justice, as well as epistemic plurality. Decolonial perspectives of power, again, help us to imagine political power that is rooted in dialogue, inclusivity, reflection, as well as bringing back the African traditional communal ways of governance through Ubuntu. Such a reimagining, Frantz Fanon teaches us, creates a space to remake institutions that honor the realities of ordinary people instead of renewing colonial legacies. We are hoping that with this conversation, perhaps through our panelists who have made the time to join us here, we will not only, think critically about the GNU, but also will find ways to think beyond elections, think about alternative ways of imagining power, power that can help ordinary people to be truly empowered. With that said, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome Professor Edith Paswana on the podium. She's going to welcome you officially in her capacity as the Executive Dean of the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs here at UNISA. Can you give her a warm round of applause, please? One, two.
Hi. Thank you. Program Director, Mwafrika Zandi Khadebe, and also for introducing this topic very adequately, using those decolonial Africanized lens. I want to greet you, also Dr. T Hoyani, the COD of Department of Political Science. I have not seen Prof yet, maybe he's still coming or in absentia. I acknowledge you. Esteemed panelist, Mr. Sandy Lezwani, Professor Derek Kotze, Ms. Kekeletso Khena, Mr. Calvin Kunene, Mr. Mijupi Palani, the community, let me put it rightly, the engaged communities of Mabopani and Bahlabini Zanin. Also, I want to acknowledge members of the diplomatic corps present here this morning. Ambassador Al-Zubeidi Abdallah, former ambassador of Libya, Ambassador Nklapo Welile, ambassador in residence, and Ambassador Obodozi, also our academic associate. UNISA colleagues, the TM school, and Department of Political Science, UNISA academic staff, our postdoctoral fellow staff, students, and all invited guests. Good morning. Tobela. Minjani. Sanibonani. Dimacheron. Thank you so much. Realamugela University ya South Africa. Sianyamugela University ya Mzansi Africa. We welcome you to the University of South Africa. I think I'm going to do mixed salads. Yes, we have communities, and you know, coming from communities, I know that we are grounded in our indigenous languages. And I don't want some of you to leave this place not understanding what we have been saying. Right? So this morning, we are gathered here under the theme, a critical reflection on the coalition government in South Africa a year later. Musho wa motlhakanelwa. Re tlo senka ditaba tša mmušo wa motlhakanelwa. That's why we are here this morning. And one of the things that really pleases me this morning is the fact that we started on time. And I think we just need to keep on this momentum. We started on time, and let's not waste the time. Bontši ba rena re nagana gore mmušo wa motlhakanelwa o thomile ka 2024 goba ka 1994 mo South Africa. Again. And the problem is because right now we were born 2000, we were born 1970, some of us. And then ever since we were born, maybe we have never seen a coalition government in this country. But if you were to go back and ask someone who was a young person in 1920 in this country, they have seen something like this before, which we call coalition government before. And the first one that I want to mark is the 1924 coalition government. Go back to your history and your books and go and back, and I'm talking, and I'm happy this room is full of young people, so that when you do this, you historicize and go and check what happened, and also how did it fare, did it do good for South Africa, did it bring something for South Africa or not? And then you will be able to understand where we are now. Because even now when we speak as if this is a completely new government in South Africa, or form of government. 1924, the National Party, the Labour Party, were in coalition under the leadership of J.B.M. Herzog. How many of you knew this? Okay. It used to be called the pact government, right? And they came together under a policy that they call South Africa First policy. Ba revere South Africa pele, mara ke South Africa yela ya gore be sena le rona ka gare. Ba ipea pele ba le teng, akere. So that was the first one that we know of. And the dominant party was the National Party at the time. And it ran between 1924 and 1929. And in 1948, the National Party came together with Afrikaner Party, right? Kanako, they defeated the ruling party, which was the United Party. And that led to the birth of apartheid. Coalition apartheid. It led to the birth of apartheid. 1994, always the common denominator is the National Party. 1994, the National Party, the ANC, the IFP came together under the banner of inclusivity, mitigating political tensions, reconciliation, foundation of democracy. And all of these came together. And come again 2024, we are here where we are. And this is why we have this discussion. And I would love us, as we go on, also to try to understand that historical issues or the historical epochs that has happened. As the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs, we host engaged scholarship projects on electoral dispute resolution in partnership with the Department of Political Science in the College of Human Sciences here at UNISA. And we are today humbled and grateful to host our communities. The community of Mawopani, Bashabine, we are very humble to have you today to come and talk to us as we reflect this issue of coalition governments under the theme, a critical reflection on the coalition government in South Africa a year later. In the past year, we have already had eminent scholars come to the school to talk about the coalition government. Go and search on our platforms. That's when the coalition government has just started and we reflected. So we are coming back again a year later to check on this. And today is the eve of the founding president of the Democratic South Africa, Rolihlahla Madiba Nelson Mandela. His birthday is tomorrow. So we are on the eve of his birthday and we are pausing, and I want to quote some of the things that he once said. We are not going to make the government of national unity an empty shell. That speech was in 1994. We want every political organization that participates in that government to feel that they are part and parcel of a government machine which is capable of accommodating their views within the context of the Reconstruction and Development Program, RDP. The young ones here know RDP as houses, right? RDP is Reconstruction and Development Program. It's a big program, national government program of rebuilding South Africa after 1994. It's not that 4-room next to you. And then he continues, I quote, "We do not want to reduce them into mere rubber stamps, to rubber stamp the decision of any organization except to say that a program has to be carried out with reservation," close quote. That was Nelson Mandela at the time. And partly it was also to conscientize people what a coalition government should look like and also what it should do, not just to rubber stamp some dominant party. This community, Indaba, on the coalition government is intended to create an enriching space for decolonized academics and communities of practice to clarify and problematize the phenomenon of a coalition government, which is a complex and relatively new element of democracy in South Africa post-1994 and back in 2024 by the front door this time. And this time by the front door, not by the back door, right? So it's in the spirit of open dialogue and participatory African democracy that this engagement aims to foster collaboration between academics from both the TM School and Department of Political Sciences, as well as our communities and activists, with the goal of producing or co-publishing on this aspect of electoral democracy and coalition government since 1994 to date. And we have various reasons why we are hosting this. One of the reasons is to revive the Pan-African ideals and African Renaissance values on elections, democracy, joint governance, and rule of law at a local and national level. We want to impart legal and political education to South Africa, South Africa's broader communities based on African-centered knowledge on electoral democracy processes, African values, human and people's rights. So we also want to contribute to the body of knowledge on Pan-African electoral knowledge with the intention to add on studies on electoral studies, as we run also a program called here Management of Democratic Elections over 36 countries on this continent. For the past 15 years, we have been training electoral management bodies all over the continent in 36 countries. So we take the issue of electoral democracy very seriously. This year, we were in Botswana, we were training the electoral management bodies there. And I think and our aim is to reach to those students of politics. I see many of them in this class, in this auditorium as well. And we also have community research community members. We have alumni of UNISA. Many of them are online. And we have the friends of the school. And we have students, we have academics, and we have our eminent experts and political analysts in the room, and they are going to sit down and unpack this. And we are looking forward to this intellectual exchange and debates that will happen here today. And we also are looking forward perhaps to start thinking about a book on elections, on coalitions in South Africa, in Africa, and the world. And I think the space allows for that. Friends, also allow me to leave you with poetic lines of the late prominent South African poet, Elder Tate, Uncle Don Matera. And the poem goes like this. I grow tired and want to leave this city, seething in unrest and injustice. I am leaving. No, I have left. Look for me on the banks of the Nile or under some spreading palm. I shall be sleeping, the sleep of freedom. Do not wake me. Leave me to dream. My dream of departure from a city of seething unrest void of pity. For I have grown weary of eating the brine and long for jungle fruit. And I think this resonates also with what I just posted on my Facebook Zandi yesterday, that I am longing to leave. And I think it just resonates with it. And let's not leave. Let's see what we can produce to make this country a better place. And welcome all. I thank you.
Colleagues, it's winter. You can be warmer than that. Can you please give a... I know those of us who subscribe to the African spiritual cosmology, we are supposed to slow down in winter, we are supposed to rest. But for this particular morning, I require you to be vibrant and engaging. Thank you, Prof. Poswane, also for revoking and evoking Pan-Africanist leaders who have thought about so many challenging questions for this country, especially the late Dr. Don Matera, revolutionary scholar of note. And I hope you feel welcome, colleagues. We are now going to hear from somebody that qualifies as an expert in today's topic, not only because he has been lecturing at UNISA since the beginning of 1998 at the Department of Political Sciences. He is a council member of the South African Association of Political Sciences and was also an executive committee member and one of the vice presidents of the International Political Science Association. He studied at the University of Stellenbosch, University of Pretoria, as well as Wits, majoring in political sciences. His most important areas of specialization include South African politics and political conflict resolution. It also includes focus areas such as negotiations, transitions, and democratic processes, as well as elections, the quality of democracy, political cartoons, international relations, land reform, and political parties. I'm still continuing to qualify him as an expert that he is. And in addition to lecturing at UNISA, Professor Dirk Godze has also lectured politics part-time about 12 years ago at TUT for journalism students. Of course, it is quite critical for not only journalism students, but all students, to be taught political science or the science of politics. He's also taught at DIRCO, as well as in the Institute of in the South African Defense College. And in the international front, this expert colleague of ours has lectured and studied in the Northwestern University in Chicago in the USA. He also studied in Sweden, in the Middle East, and so forth. This, in my opinion, qualifies you, Professor Godze, as an expert. We value your opinion, we also value your time, and I have a little joke to share with you. Our students know you. In fact, my students know you more than they know me, their lecturer. So thank you for putting our department out there. With those words, I welcome you on stage. Colleagues, give him a vibrant, warm welcome.
Yeah. Thanks. She's my colleague in my department, so we know each other very well. We actually went once together to Parliament to make a presentation there about election matters. So very welcome again for the visitors here at UNISA, and feel at home. I think this is where we want to interact and to share what we have and want to listen from your side also. As you can see on the program, I must look at the political context of coalition. So I interpret it, if I look at the program, that I'm not going to talk so much about South Africa per se and the government of national unity. What I'm going to do is give you a sort of a broader framework, and then Mr. Swana and the others will go further into more detail about the South African situation. So if I don't talk too much about South Africa, maybe in the discussions we can do that, but I first want to sort of lay the foundation for it. So why are coalitions important? Why do we talk about it? Why is government important? The point is that we as the voters, and I hope many of you are voting, that we as the voters are giving the mandate to political parties at the time of elections. So we are not ourselves in Parliament. We are too many. We are more than 60 million. So we cannot be in parliament, all of us. So there has to be a mechanism, and that is what government is, the governing, the ruling party. But if we talk about democracy, not one-party states, but democracy, which is multi-party and then all the other components of democracy, it means that a party can claim, or a combination of party can claim, to be government if they have 50% plus one or more of the support. If you have less than that, you are not automatically can be the government. So what happens when there's a situation where there's no party with more than 50%? That's the issue. And that is where we have been last year, in May. Is that there was no party with more than 50% plus one, or 50% plus one or more. So that's the need, that's where coalitions come in, is when there is the situation where one party on its own does not have a majority, has maybe the most votes, but not even then that party can claim to be necessarily part of a coalition. We've seen it even in South Africa. I will come to that in a moment. So the majority must form the executive. The executive is therefore the cabinet, the deputy ministers, because as you know, from a constitutional point of view, the state consists of three components, three powers. The legislature, which is parliament, at, in our case 3 levels or 3 spheres, as the executive, which are the ones that implement or that execute the decisions of parliament, and the judiciary. They are supposed to be separate, what we call the separation of powers. So they should not overlap. A minister cannot be a judge at the same time. Or a member of parliament cannot be a judge. They have to be separate. They cannot overlap. So this is what we have now. This is the reason why we are where we are at this stage in the South African context after last year's election. Now, how is this majority tested? How do you know that the government still has the majority? It's very often in the form of a motion of no confidence in Parliament. So the parties can come and say, well, we don't trust this government anymore. We are going to test it. And that's where the motion of no confidence comes from. Then they vote. And if the parties that constitute the government don't receive the 50% plus one in Parliament anymore, they are outvoted. They lost their status as government. So that is where these come in. Now, what if a party does not have 50% plus one? What's the options? You can see there on the screen. I hope so. Is it there? Yes. Okay, the first one is what is referred to as a minimum winning coalition. Sorry? Yes, on that side, yes. So it is a minimum winning coalition. It means that the objective is just to reach that 50% plus one. So that means a strong opposition is still possible. Because there can be 49% can be the opposition. 50 plus 1 is the government. So it means it's the smallest possible form of coalition. Very often it's only 2 parties. The second option, and these were all options last year, so I'm not just talking theory, I'm talking about also what were the options last year for the different parties after our election. The second option is what is called a grand coalition. I will come back to that if there's enough time. And that is where there's, the coalition is bigger than just 50% plus 1. It can be 60% or even more. But it is between parties, big parties that come together. It's not simply there, but I will explain that a little later. The third option is the government of national unity, and I will come to that also again, but it is during times of crime, of crises or transitions. So it's when a country is in a period of a crisis. I will explain it in a moment further, where, for example, during the time of war, during the Second World War, for example, in the UK, the United Kingdom, Britain, the two main parties, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, came together, although the one party, the Conservative Party, had already a majority. So they didn't need that other party. But because of the crisis, to unify during a time of crisis, they decided to come together in order to have a government of national unity. Can also be a minority government, that even if a party does not have a majority, they say, well, we are going to try our luck. We are not having a majority, but we have, in some cases, a sort of we hope some other parties will vote for us. And then the fifth option is called a confidence and supply agreement. And that is that it's a minority party, but they have an understanding with other parties that when they vote on important matters, like, for example, the budget, or the election of a speaker, or the president in our case or so, then they will vote together. Now, the last three, the government of national unity, the minority government, as well as the confidence and supply agreement, were three options that the ANC in their own document last year, when they started negotiating, actually mentioned as options. Okay, now the government of national unity all over the world, in terms of a broader history, where were examples of that? Switzerland and Cyprus and Lebanon, Malaysia, Belgium are all what is referred to sometimes by some as a plural societies, especially from a cultural point of view. There's different cultural groups there. So to avoid that some of these cultural groups become permanent minorities, especially the small ones, they create what is called a consociational democracy, which is a type of a democracy where there's a permanent government of national unity. In Switzerland, for example, they have not one president, but 7. What they call the Federal Council, and they rotate. Every year there's another president. Now that's part of this. I can go into the detail later on. So what are the different types of governments of national unity? The first one is the one that I mentioned already, is to protect and consolidate against the external threat, like the UK, Sweden, even Israel called it the one in 2001 like that. The second possible government of national unity, or second category of governments of national unity, is post-conflict. It means it's after a war, especially a civil war, but before an election. So it's before they take an election, and it is, but after the conflict. So it's that interim period, And it is in order to consolidate the political situation there. And I mentioned the examples there, so Macedonia, Afghanistan, Rwanda, especially after the genocide of 1994, Burundi, and South Sudan, DRC after the Sun City Agreement here. Sudan is a very important example because it was first a government of national unity between the North and the South, with the first agreement of 2005, and then in 2018 within the southern part, or the Republic of South Sudan. Incidentally, some of us were in 2005 part of the UNISA initiative to assist this South Sudan with this building of these new institutions of their peace agreement. I was there in New Site in the southern part of South Sudan, and I spoke about governments of national unity with the whole leadership of the SPLM. So this is something which is not theoretical. It's very real. It's very, very much political. Then it can be a third group is governments of national unity, which is after a conflict, but they are elected. So it is after an election also. They are elected in order to enforce or implement an agreement. Now, our government of national unity in 1994 was like that. So it was after the constitution was negotiated, and that government of national unity was seen as part of the transition between 1994 and 1999 in order to implement the new constitution. And then it is another one which hasn't been used lately so much, is which is after a conflict and when that country is in an economic crisis. And it was especially some of the European countries after the Second World War where they come together in order to consolidate in an economic sense. Now, grand coalitions. Grand coalitions, some people say the current, what is our government of now, is actually a grand coalition. Because remember, there was, immediately after last year's election, there was quite an intense debate, what is this thing, what can we call it? Is it the government of national unity, is it the ordinary coalition, or is it the grand coalition? So that's why I'm giving you these concepts also to understand. Normally, a grand coalition is when there's two big parties, and very often they are from opposing sides, on the opposing sides of the political spectrum. So the left and the right, and it's not by choice. It's very often because of the election results that they don't have any other choice but to work together. The best example lately is Germany. During the time of Angela Merkel, the Social Democrats, coming more from the left, had to work with the Christian Democrats. They are on the left and the right of the spectrum. So this notion that coalitions cannot work if parties are not close to each other, it's not necessarily the case. In some instances, and look where Germany is economically, the biggest economic power in Europe. Tunisia, after the Arab Spring, when they formed their first sort of more democratic or multi-party system, Indaba party, what's this Muslim Brotherhood party. Now more lately, now not how many weeks ago, the Austrian president was here on a state visit. His country is an interesting example of a grand coalition. Because in March this year, they, after negotiating 5 months, 151 days, they reached an agreement of 240 pages. It's there you can go and read it. It's in German, unfortunately. But it's a grand coalition between 3 parties. Normally it's only 2 parties in Austria. So this is the closest or the most recent example of something like that. Denmark is another one. Now, coalition formations, Chair, it's enough time, okay, is that how is a coalition formed? Very often it is determined by the Constitution what should happen after an election. And it says that if no party has a majority, then it prescribes the procedures. In the Netherlands, for example, they have to identify certain facilitators that take the lead. Why do I mention this? Let's say in 4.5 years from now, with the next national or provincial election, no party has can call itself the biggest party. Let's say party A has 25% and party B has 25%, and then the other parties follow. What happens then? Who takes the lead? Who starts with the negotiations? Our Constitution is silent on it. Our Constitution is not written for coalition government. It had a one-party government in mind. So it's not designed for that. So constitutional lawyers and others take note of it. I will come in a moment to our own situation last year. In other cases, the president of the country asks, but then it is an independent president. It's not like our president who is elected by parliament. Then that president is directly elected on his or her own, like in the case of Austria. Then they must ask the parties, and they can pick and choose actually. Who are the parties, the leader of which party they will ask to start the process of negotiations. And if that person fails, then they go to others. Again, we don't have that because we don't have an independently elected president. So it brings in the position of the president and his or her status, constitutional status, when we start to think about constitutional or coalition formations in future. We have neither of this. No? So we are, in a sense, there's a vacuum. Coalitions, take note of this. Coalitions don't exist in systems where there are directly elected presidents. Like in the US, they can't have coalitions. Because the president is elected, and there can only be one president. There can be not a number and one doesn't have a majority. It's an either-or situation. Because ultimately, like in the French system, if there's 3 candidates, the first round doesn't receive 50% plus 1, they have a second round until there's one with a 50% plus 1 majority. So in a presidential system, a directly elected presidential system, there's no coalitions. So if we don't want coalitions, we must go to a system of directly elected president on its own. Like the full presidential system, because there's also a semi-presidential system, like the French and many other African countries, especially in West Africa, not Nigeria. They have a deputy, vice president actually, because there you have on the one hand the president, but then you have still a government, a cabinet with a prime minister. Many African countries have that, and then that cabinet can be in the form of a coalition. But then you can have also a system where what they call cohabitation, where the president can come from one party and the government and prime minister can come from another party. Then it's almost a coalition between the president and the executive. So you start to see that there are many different options. I hope I don't bore you, but this is possibilities for us to think about in the future. And then what should happen is, what didn't happen here, and I trust that other speakers will talk about it, is that before a coalition can be concluded, there must be negotiations about what do they conclude on. What's the agreement? That's why I talk about Austria, for 240 pages agreement. About detail, therefore. Our agreement was the statement of intent of 7 pages, 6-7 pages, And you will, if I have time, I will just show you the framework. I'm not going to discuss that. But that is on policy matters. How do you understand national health? How do you understand Bella? How do you understand land? How do you understand international relations? What's the common policy? We don't have, this government doesn't have it. Very general principles only. But we can't, because the Constitution says the president must be inaugurated 14 days after the announcement of the elections. So it's only 14 days. And within 5 days after that, the president must be inaugurated. And the moment the president is inaugurated, the previous cabinet dissolves. So there's no, in 2019 for 3 days we didn't have a government. Because the president didn't announce Paul Mashatile as deputy president, and he was still talking about it and consulting and so on. And for those 3 days he was alone. There was no ministers. So that's the implications of this 14 days plus 5. So what it meant is that in our case, let's say maximum of 19 days, everything had to be done of what these other countries are doing over months. And then they must also fiscal policies and then negotiate about the seats in government and in the cabinet. For example, now Andrew Whitfield of the DA has been removed as Deputy Minister of DTI. That position must go back to another DA member because they've agreed on it last year, on the number of seats in the cabinet as well as which portfolios is going to which party. So these are the things that are negotiated in any form of coalition. Okay. I think I'm going to skip this. I think others will talk about this. But what you can see here is the statement of intent. That's the basic document that was negotiated or agreed upon. So it includes foundational principles, the basic minimum program of priorities, and then the modalities of the government of national unity. Here you can see are the 9 basic priorities that they agreed on: rapid, inclusive, sustainable economic growth, and so on. And then also the modalities. And the modalities are, the first one is basically a form of proportionality. Know that the ANC received more or less 40% in the end. I say more or less because in the end it was more or less, it wasn't exactly the same. That the decision-making process or procedure will be first try for consensus. If that doesn't work, then going back to the negotiations of the 90s, sufficient consensus. Sufficient consensus now 60%. If 60% agrees, then there's a decision by the cabinet. Who constitutes the 60%? The ANC and the DA, 62% together. So they are like an inner core of decision making. Dispute resolutions, they have established what they call a clearinghouse that was used in the case of the Bella Act. Didn't work so well. The issues, I think they will discuss that. Then lastly, coalitions don't exist only at the national level. The first coalitions in South Africa was after the 1999 election, the second election, where in the provinces of the Western Cape and KwaZulu-Natal, they had to form, none of the parties had the majority there, and they had to form a provincial coalition. And then in 2006, the quite famous coalition of Valenzuela in Cape Town, where she had 6 parties, with a majority of only 1. One day they had to vote, and one of their members were in hospital, and they actually brought him out in a wheelchair to come and vote, because it was necessary to have a majority. So that's what sometimes happens. And then in the case now, Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, you can see KwaZulu-Natal in a very sort of unique situation where the biggest party is not part of the coalition, in the MK party. But the other parties together, the ANC, IFP, DA, NFP, they have a majority of, I think, 1 or 2 seats. Almost the same, the wheelchair example. And then Gauteng, ANC, 34%, but they have 7 MCs. So it's 70% executive, so it's disproportionate. But still, this is how it is. Local government at the moment, after the last election, 2021, do you know how many local authorities don't have a majority party? 66. They call it hung parties, hung governments or hung councils, because they are all not, the system at local government level works slightly different. At local level, what has been more significant maybe is since 2016, most of the metros here in Gauteng are coalition governments. I think what we see, maybe just to conclude, what we see at local government level and what we should try to avoid at national and provincial level is the role of small parties, one-person parties in some cases, COPE or Al Jamaa or others, where they actually developed a veto power, the so-called kingmakers. And that led to the instability that causes to give coalition governments actually a negative reputation in South Africa. And that is that there's a lot of turnover, many motions of no confidence, and therefore it's seen as unstable forms of government. But that doesn't have to be the case. I mean, there's some legislation in the pipeline in order to limit the number of motions of no confidence per year and so on. So I'm going to conclude on this point, Chair. There's still a lot to say, but there's a whole panel that is still waiting to talk. No, I'm fine. Oh, the statement of intent. Okay. The statement of intent, the first point here, it says cooperation in executive and the legislature. What it means, it's not limited only to the cabinet, but it includes also parliament. So if you look, for example, at how the chairpersons of the different portfolio committees are appointed. Now, for those who are not familiar with the concept, portfolio committees are that for each minister, each department, each ministry, there's a committee in parliament that is responsible to make sure that there's oversight over that particular minister and ministry and department. So there's a portfolio committee for home affairs, a portfolio committee for higher education, a portfolio committee for justice, a portfolio committee for basic education. Now, and then there's also one which they call SCOPA, the Select Committee on Public Accounts, which is very important because it deals with the financial statements, the financial reports of all the different departments. Now, obviously the chairpersons of those committees are important because they can, if there's, let's say now with General Mkwanazi, if they want, they can say, we want General Mkwanazi to come to us and give evidence. They can ask any one of us in terms of the Constitution. They can summon you to Parliament to say, come and give evidence or give information what we need. So it's important. So this government of national unity combination applies even at that level. So it's in Parliament to some extent also. The decision about who's the speaker, Toko Dodisa, incidentally, she's one of our students, was, still supposed to be. She was registered for a master's in our department, but obviously she doesn't have time now. Sorry? Sorry? Yeah. Okay. Then the deputy, so she's from the ANC. The deputy speaker is from the DA. So that shows you also the combination. The National Council of Provinces, the same. The chairperson is ANC, and then the deputy chair is from the DA also. So that is the nature of what they agreed on. So whoever, whether Toko Dodisa continues as speaker or not, the next speaker will still come from the ANC. So that's the nature of this agreement. It is not based on personalities. It's based on the distribution between the different parties of those who participate. Okay, so the next point is about collective commitment to constitutional founding values. The preamble of the Constitution is written into the statement of intent. So it provides a type of a common foundation of values to say these are the values that we all agree on. So it will be interesting, for example, it's not my opinion, they say it themselves. The MK party says they don't want this constitution. So does that by implication disqualify them from a coalition like this? That will be an interesting question. I mean, it hasn't arisen because there was no discussions yet about that. But that is the point of departure, is there for the Constitution. And then the founding principles, respect for the Constitution, non-racialism. I mean, those principles that's common principles. I don't think they actually negotiated that. The priorities, I think, Chair, that can be part of the discussion further on. So I'm trying a second time to close.
Thank you, Prof. You succeeded this time. Well done. Can you please give him a round of applause? Yeah, no, I felt we needed that, a political education moment, which should have been something that was done very thoroughly, as part of voter education. Because, some of the things that you brought up here, Professor Kotze, I myself was not aware of in terms of the context of the GNU. So imagine the ordinary person on the street. So thank you for that. And thank you for also just pointing out, you know, some of the things that I think were not considered when we went into this, you know, government of national unity, and very interesting choice of words there, you know, because this is a post-conflict discourse, as it were. But anyway, we are here. I hope our colleagues in the, or rather from the legal side of things, can also speak to that point about, you know, a constitutional oversight, you know, in terms of how coalitions are governed. You say we don't have that in our constitution. And also the question of negotiations for me is quite central because as you know, this country was founded on, you know, negotiations during the Codesa moments, and we all know how power played itself. In fact, we are sitting here in this GNU reality because of that. So I really appreciate the political education that you've also offered us, you know, putting theory into context, using relevant example, much appreciated. Colleagues, I gave him, you know, more time because one of our speakers is running late, Ms. Kekeletso Kena. I hope if she's able to come, she'll do what she can. But in this moment, allow me to invite our second speaker, Mr. Sandy Leswana. I received your bio by phone and my eyes are challenged. So yes, comrades, the age thing has kicked in. But I'll try to do justice. It is quite extensive, so I will use the liberty as the chairperson to pick and choose how I present or misrepresent you. I hope I can be forgiven in advance. Sandy Leswana joins us as the principal consultant for the Center for Strategic Leadership. He started his career, and these devices are failing us just when we need them. It refuses to zoom. Can you imagine? Africa, can you borrow me your phone? I know you've got, because you're the one who sent me this document. Let me embarrass you a little bit. No, I'll read it if it's visible. Okay. Yes, he started his career as a head office trainee in the Finance System Administration Department of Anglo-American in 1988 rather, 37 years ago. His training focused on software engineering and IT support. He worked also for New York Times, Johannesburg Bureau, for Caltex Oil, Dawn Suite Hotels, and the Converge Net Holdings and Africa Media Online. He worked 7 years in the fuel and energy sector, including Xanex Oil from 1993 to 2000. He also worked as a director and CEO of JSE-listed Converge Net Holdings, which provided ICT infrastructure as load shedding was starting, and was at the coalface of thinking through backup systems, including generators, water tanks, and uninterrupted power supply, the UPS devices, to corporate clients and the state, especially during 2012 and 2013. He still serves as the Infrastructure Theft and Tampering Committee in Molsdrift, where he also lives in an off-grid based facility or home. His home is solar powered and satellite, and runs on satellite Wi-Fi. Good for you, sir. He commented widely on the media, including the SABC, on load shedding in South Africa, as well as the various electricity power deficits. Over the years, he has participated in founding companies, including the JSE listed companies, as a shareholder, as also a director and an executive member. From 2007 until 2021, he started teaching part-time at the Wits Business School and also consulting more extensively to the South African public sector, including facilitating the National Youth Development Strategy Investment Summit for the Kenneth Kaunda and Kangala District Municipality. Your bio is quite extensive. Mr. Swane is used by many major media houses. I don't appreciate the word used there. They're not using you, you are using them. For governance and political analysis, including Al Jazeera, BBC, AP, The Voice of America, the SABC, Europe, America, and so forth. With those words, Africa, please come to the front and give us your address on the GNU a year later. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Can connect to Lendo, good morning, colleagues and the leaders of UNISA. Just to thank you on a few, maybe two accounts. The first one is that this university is the one that honored my uncle, Professor Achima Feje. That is the elder brother to my mother. So I have been in this building even to represent my family on account of my uncle. Thank you for that. The second basis on me thanking you, obviously, when you study as an adult, there's a degree of absconding from the degrees. But I completed 3 here. I completed 3 degrees here. So thank you also for that. Now, my presentation may not be the type of thing you are used to listening to, especially those of you who come from political science and that sort of thing, and that sort of background. But I think it will help at any rate. Ufuna usebenza memory stick? Projector somewhere else? I anticipated something like this. Memory stick. There's only one file there. There's only one file there, if I did it correctly. So, whilst it's connecting, you'll tell me when it shows up there. Is it showing up there? Or not yet. So one of the things, even within the histories that have been told by the 2 previous speakers, one of the things that is easy to overlook, and I forgot that, because I didn't grow up studying political science. The subject that my father exposed me to was history. And there's a part of the history, the economic history of South Africa, the extent to which it actually shaped the different governments, including the coalitions that were formed, that were mentioned here before. So, for instance, the battles of the Rand Laws versus the Afrikaners and so on and so forth. And so my entry point, and really this is the point I'm bringing home here, is that the biggest chess piece in the 2024 election that I only understood after the election was actually the role of business in the election, the unelected shaping the government after the election. So the government, to my mind, that runs South Africa today is controlled by unelected people. And those people are big business. in South Africa today. So basically that is the take-home point here. The second take-home point is that they are, from a social perspective, you and I, the citizens of the Republic of South Africa, we are continuously being deprived. In other words, impoverished and pauperized. This government is not a successful government. So that's the second point. In terms of, not in terms of, they may be successful in terms of enriching themselves and do whatever they want to do for themselves, but in terms of the citizens, we're not getting much from them. So the GNU did not take everyone by surprise. Business Unity South Africa, Business for South Africa, BLSA, ANC Veterans League, and the DA knew what they wanted and they got what they wanted. Before the elections, I was with Mavuso Msimang, some of you know him. I'll say this, I'm not anybody's cupboard. If you tell me something, don't tell me things you don't want me to talk about. So I was with Mavuso Msimang at my house, and the elections had not yet taken place, but he was, in passing, marketing the idea that it would be a good idea for the ANC and the DA to get married before the elections. During the elections, talking to Dalimpofu, for instance, he was very confident that the coalition that would come out would be the MK, EFF, and the ANC. So there were people before the elections actually took place who had been working for a much longer period of time to actually create a DA-ANC grand coalition, and the ANC specifically of Ramaphosa. And without, and I mean MK helped them because they didn't have to contend with Zuma inside the ANC. He was outside, he was in MK. So the ANC of Ramaphosa was there for the taking. Okay, thank you.
It's connected.
It's connected. So the slide that should be showing there should say the top before SA 10 July 2020. Yeah. 4 years before the GNU, clear targets were set by B4SA, Business for South Africa. So the essence of what I'm saying is that on the 29th or 30th of May, when the results were coming out and all this was happening, there were people who had a solution in a briefcase. Right? The solution was in the briefcase. Dalimpofu and them didn't know what the hell is going on. SA Business Grouping proposes, this is directly from the news reports, right? SA Business Grouping proposes ambitious 3.4 economic recovery plan. This is 4 years before the elections. Before SA, which represents a majority of SA businesses partnering in their response to COVID-19, has released a 12-point plan it says will accelerate economic recovery. It says the plan, together with policy interventions, could increase GDP by 1 trillion, create up to 1.5 million jobs, and increase tax revenues by 1 billion. But it says its plan will require about 3.4 million in funds over the next 3 years, right? So what were the things that they were going to do? Now, and this helps us to understand what has happened. These people have never been out of power. When they lost this in 2020, they've stayed in power under the Operation Vulindlela continuously. They've never been removed. They've stayed in power continuously under Operation Vulindlela. Okay? So what did they say they are going to do? Number one, tackle crime and corruption, right? They said that in 2020. We're in 2025 now. Then you can think of Mkhwanazi, the extent to which they've tackled the corruption, the crime and corruption, right? Improve ease of doing business in South Africa, right? In other words, how long does it take you to open a business? At month end, how many documents do you have to fill in order that your business doesn't get deregistered or penalized by SARS or all of that? The ease of doing business. I mean, by the way, I am a chairman of a youth development agency for Africa. We've been running for 21 years. Our headquarters are in Rwanda. Let me tell you, and then we want to register an entity there. Then we go there, you submit your police clearance. Each director must submit a police clearance. And then in Rwanda, you also submit a health clearance that somebody must confirm that you are not sick. Then we submitted all these documents that they wanted. Then about 3-4 days ago, I get another request from the government of Rwanda that now we must produce for each director a record showing their mental health status. Right? You talk about the ease of doing business. It's now becoming impossible. Then they'll be asking for blood type, weight, and height. So when you say that you want to do ease of doing business, it must be easy. You must remove everything that is not necessary for the actual successful operation of the business. And then the other one that they said, mobilize large-scale infrastructure projects. They said that in 2020, that they are going to do it. I do not know if those projects have started. The large-scale infrastructure, they have been in power since that time. It's not new, right? And then they said clarity on the land reform. If you listen to Dikgang Moseneke, you listen to Advocate Nugai Tobi, there is no lack of clarity. Land reform could have continued from day one in South Africa. What has hindered land reform is the African National Congress, let alone what the Mbeki brothers have got to say about it. I mean, black people don't need land, you sort of give them an RDP house or a flat or something. Mwele Mbeki and his brother Thabo. Right, that sort of thinking, right? So, I don't subscribe to that. You see, when I stayed with my grandfather in Pondoland in the early 70s, I left Pondoland in 1975, although I'm born Sowetan. I left in 19... So, well, you could run, no boy could run from the start to the finish of my grandfather's land. He had tree plantations, orchards, everything was there. That land was taken around 77, right? Whilst I'm alive, I ate the fruit that my dad had planted in 1948 with his father of that land. So land dispossession is something that I know. I don't live in a flat now. Even today, I live in Maldersdrift on a small holding. I don't believe in small land. Okay, let's move on. Right? So there was never confusion about Ukuthi akubuyisa umhlaba. There was not a single day when there was a confusion about that. It was an invention of the compromisers. Let's move on. Education and skills development. The issue of education and skills development, the Stats SA community survey, and you can see the reports, and I've got an article on the internet on this. Basically, the issue of skills development in this period of democracy, education, the case for the so-called coloreds and the Africans is that since 1994 till today, we have put reverse gear in education and skills development. We've reversed. So if you look at the proportion of population, the proportions in 1994, it would have been that the proportion of graduates in the black population versus the proportion of graduates in the white population would have been 1.1 is to 1.1. Today is 1 is to 6. So there would be 6 graduates that are white versus 1 that is black. So the situation has been in reverse gear. And there's a lot of other reports that have come in since 2020. So, review trade policies. Are we now in a crisis with trade policies as we speak today? Or trade negotiations, etc.? Has it been reviewed? I'm not sure. I don't know. But certainly from a strategic point of view, what was written in the NDP in 2012 has not been done. And now everybody's panicking and blaming everybody else about trade. especially relative to the USA. Meantime, in 2012, we're told to diversify our markets so that we're not caught in a corner like we are now. Let's move on. Labor law reform, right? What is that? To make it easy to fire people. That's basically what it is, right? And then simplifying mining investment regulation. I don't know if they've done that. I have no evidence of that. Align national energy strategy across the sectors. We know that we only have 60% labor energy availability factor right now instead of 70. We should be at 70 and above. We are not there. And I do not honestly believe that we should be at 60% right now. Then the next one, telecoms maximize connectivity. There are other technologies here, but what we're being told is that mass must come, this, that, and the other is still a problem. Financial inclusion and fiscal support. Okay, so those are like 12 things that they had prioritized that they were supposed to do. Now, these people, by the way, although they represent CEOs from over 115 of South Africa's leading corporations, signed this pledge, right? These people, by the way, represent about 1.2 million workers employed by their companies. Although there would be about 16 million or more than 16 million people employed. And they say they represent the majority, but it's actually 1.2. Let's leave it there. A business's partnership with government, recently announced by the president and leading CEOs, is a primary example of this type of collaborative effort, which is focused on addressing key fundamentals, right? This was stated by Business Unity South Africa through its structure, Business for South Africa, is supporting government to implement key priority interventions in the areas of energy, transport, logistics, crime and corruption. Energy, transport and logistics, crime and corruption. So from 2020, they've been busy with that, those areas. The question is, if you're asking me where is the GNU today, maybe let me clarify this. How do I understand politics, right? Politics, I see politics in the quality of education of my grandchildren, in my case. I see politics in the quality of life and standard of living of my children. Are you getting me? So, if in the 70s as a young boy, I would have gone from Soweto to Southdale Shopping Center. As we drive in the car, I drive past a white school where boys of my age are playing rugby on a plush rugby field. And I have no prospect of doing that. That is politics to me. Where I could only watch a TV through a window in a shopping center, not at home, through a window, that is politics to me. So politics to me has a concrete form. So when we don't have energy, when the lights don't come on, it means our politics are wrong. When I cannot get the train from here to the Eastern Cape peacefully without being robbed, without being inconvenienced, peacefully like I do in Germany, then our politics are wrong. I hope I'm making sense. So to me, politics must have a concrete form. Okay? And I think they were right in putting those things there. That they are not everything, but they are not there. So they say that they are going to do this together with government. And the veterans of the ANC who wanted to partner with the DA, they are partnering with the DA and partnering with Business for South Africa and outsourcing the duties of government to business. And then eventually formalizing it now in the GNU into public-private partnerships as contracts, actual contracts. The process of securing extensive resources, including funding, skills, and expertise to support government in addressing these initial priorities has started and are being procured. This is being done through organized business, including BUSA, B4SA, Business Leadership South Africa. The black business organizations are not party to this. This is white capital, what some call white monopoly capital. So you need to understand that politics is also about property. You cannot be powerful without property. So the owners of land, the owners of the means of production, are there to control the elected representatives of the people in order to protect their property rights. Am I making myself clear? So, and that is what the so-called GNU is. Urhulumente wenkazathi. Right? Inkazati, lenkazati. This so-called GNU is there to protect the property rights. And it is consistent with the instructions of the World Bank to have a government, a private sector-led development program, which I don't know whether that has ever been successful. That the private sector must lead the state, must lead development. And that is what we already have in South Africa. The Resource Mobilization Fund, which recently raised 100 million. This was in 2023, 1 year, in July 23, 1 year before the elections. They had raised 100 million. To do what? Mteto Nyati, this chairman of ESCOM, he doesn't tell us how many of these so-called managers who are turning ESCOM around are actually employed by B4SA. Who are they? Where are they located? Who are they? This ESCOM was running since we were born. I was born in the 60s. ESCOM was running with state employees. Today, for ESCOM to get back to its performance, it has got to actually have managers and engineers who are employed and paid for by the private sector under this GNU, but it started under the ANC of Ramaphosa. I hope we're still together. I hope everybody's comfortable. Right? 27 July 2023. And I want you to know these names. When they appear on TV, you can recognize them for what they are. Kesku Vadia, Busa CEO, expressed the importance of collaboration and said, listen to this, business has consistently, and underline the word consistently. When you say something consistent, it means it's never changing, it's the same all the time, consistently. Said that long-term meaningful investment is a precursor to sustainable inclusive growth, which in turn is fundamental to addressing socio-economic improvement. So what drives long-term development? How did Thabo Mbeki actually achieve 5% GDP and higher? GDP growth and higher. It was through investment. The word is what? Investment. B was in place when Thabo Mbeki was running this country. So all these other stories are irrelevant. The thing that was needed was what? Investment. And investment was happening without changing any laws in South Africa. It was actually escalating. Thabo Mbeki set a record during his time that was last reached in 1983 of investment, without changing and abolishing the laws that were being asked to abolish now, the transformation laws. Martin Kingston, chair of B4SA steering committee, emphasized business shared belief with government that enduring and substantial investment is crucial for sustainable and inclusive growth. So, and then he continues, as a business community, we are clear that we need constructive interventions now. And that was 2023. The elections was going to be in 2024. He said now. The graph that we are seeing has got a red line in the middle. You can see the red line. On the left-hand side, the red line heads towards 15%. Can you see that? So, if you look, the gross fixed capital formation, which is what is called investment, should actually be double that. It should not be 15%, it should be 30%. In South Africa, we're averaging 15%. And at the moment under the GNU, we're even below the levels that we're at in 2019. The GNU is investing, even with Operation Vulindlela, less than what investment was in 2019. But the investment rate needs to double. Two, If you look on the left-hand side on the graph, can you see that 1,200 number on the left there? At the top is 1,400. So if your investment was at the correct level, that number should be 2.1, should be 2,100. In other words, 30% of about 7 trillion rands. We should be investing 2.1 trillion per year, every year, in order to get out of unemployment in South Africa. Siavanas goes. But we are now hovering around 1.2 and less. So the number actually needs to double. And the GNU, when Cyril Ramaphosa took power in 2012 as deputy president, we were told that investment is going to flood in. The only person who has flooded investment in was Thabo Mbeki. It was not Cyril. Under Cyril, investment actually collapsed. It is continuing to collapse even today. Right? So, all right. So, the GNU is not doing what it was supposed to do in terms of the basics of getting the country moving forward, regardless of the fact that Operation Vulindlela was launched in 2020. So when they had that big fight about the budget and all that, Cyril came up and said what? He said the DA can leave the GNU because the Operation Vulindlela, which is the core of the GNU, was started in 2020 without the DA. And it will continue without the DA because these business people will not step out of power that they are in because of the DA. And the DA knows that if it steps out of power, there's nothing that it will prevent. There's nothing. It changes nothing. It needs to stay in power. So the GNU, because everybody has reached a stage where the state must operate on the basis of business. So, like your phone, your Android phone, it has got the Android operating system. So the ANC is an app, the DA is an app. The operating system is business for South Africa. BUSA is business. So anybody who's going to get into government will get into government in partnership with big business. And big business will dictate the agenda. Let's go again. It follows then that unemployment since 2020 until now has increased. And GDP has actually fallen below the 0.6% achieved in 2024 and worse than the 0.7% growth achieved in 2023. So the GDP growth rate is actually falling. The year before in 2023 was 0.7. Last year 0.7. This year first quarter 0.1% GDP growth. It's going down. And these are the people who say business is the most competent factor of South African society. But we had civil servants who actually built a far superior performing economy before. So unemployment right now, by 2029, is going to be sitting at about 14 million people. Will be almost reaching the population number of Zimbabwe. Sichaba, a nation of unemployed South Africans. It's growing all the time. That's why you find this Gerifori of Capitec, one of the top capitalists in South Africa, saying that we must change the way we're calculating unemployment. Rather than solve the problem, change the way that we are measuring it. If I'm using a tape measure to measure how long is there to there, he said, no, let's remove the tape measure. Let's walk. You call Sandile, he's got the right step. He must measure with his feet. That's Gerifori for you. And Pakistan supports that. They are running away from accuracy. And you'll remember the words of Amilcar Cabral. Don't hide the difficulties. Claim no easy victories. And tell no lies. Gerifori is educating us how to tell lies. The South African economy kept its head above the water in the first quarter of 2025. expanding by a marginal 0.1% compared to the fourth quarter of 2024, that's Stats SA. The economy grows by 0.1%. The NDP said already in 2025 you must grow by 5.4%. So when you take office as business for South Africa, the DA and the ANC, the three components of this government, and you are achieving 0.1% when you are supposed to be at 5.4%, then we must come to UNISA, some of us, and tell the people here that the GNU is doing very well. The above changes in employment and unemployment resulted in the official unemployment rate increasing by 1 percentage point from 31.9 in the fourth quarter to 32. It doesn't say decreasing. Unemployment is actually increasing. The expanded unemployment rate in the first quarter of 2025 increased by 1.2% to 43.1. Now, when we are headed towards the situation, and some of the provinces are already there, where half of the nation is not working, how are you ever going to do wealth redistribution with half of your people not working? What wealth can you have if you are not earning on a regular basis? And by the way, under Thabo Mbeki, unemployment was decreasing. It was not increasing. And some of you joined those who removed him from office. But that's another story. But after that, unemployment went one direction, upwards. I'm sorry. The first year of GNU has a flurry of activities, but there are no real results where it matters most. You'll see Steenhuisen on TV, and that's Schrober. What is this Schrober? Dr. Schrober, and others, Bogatin Mackenzie, howling and howling, Bonchabeling, and so on, howling on TV. But where it matters most, people can't put a plate before their children. And you cannot tell me that political science doesn't tell you that politics must reduce itself to healthy children. Then there's no need to attend a political science class if that is not taught. Now, listen to me, the basis of this presentation. This is the basis. This slide is the basis of this presentation. On 28 May 2024, Business Leadership South Africa warning to the ANC. It says the business to ditch key partnerships in the key populist coalition. Right? Sorry, if they choose populist in the coalition parties. If I knew, this is the day before the elections last year, the day before, 28. If a new ruling coalition includes partners who push for nationalization and new taxes, the business sector will withdraw from a successful partnership with government. You remember that this business partnership was in operation from 2020. It was there before the elections. Then before, the day before the elections, they issue a warning to Ramaphosa to say, Ramaphosa, if you choose these guys who are talking nationalization, EFF, MKP, we will move out of your capacity to turn ESCOM around, your capacity to turn Transnet around. You will not have us there. We are not going to support an administration that is touting policies of mass economic destruction. Busisiwe Mavuso, CEO of Business Leadership South Africa, told News 24 amid continued speculation about an ANC-EFF coalition. Right? So there were rumors that indeed the ANC is going to lose majority. Some of us had predicted that the ANC is going to 40%. Then the EFF was well placed to partner with the ANC. Business for leadership, BUSA, B4SA, and BLSA said over our dead bodies. So they had to engineer a scheme of as if people are being invited. You get invited into the negotiation room, you go straight to the exit door. The EFF manifesto includes policies to nationalize mines, banks, and construction firms, as well as the Reserve Bank, along with proposed new taxes on the wealthy. That is why I said, when the ANC was proposing VAT increases, that they are now departing from their instructions from big business. Do you understand me? There was not, in this period of the GNU, you cannot increase taxes because your mandate is written here. There must be no increase of taxes. Last year, more than 130, can you see, it doesn't say in 2024, it says in 2023. Last year, more than 130 CEOs of the largest companies pledged their support for business-led initiative. Can you see that? Business-led initiative to assist the government in fixing the country's energy, logistics, and security problems. So the government, the Mavuso Msimang of this world, the Snuki Zikalalas of this world, basically accepted, unlike Mbeki before them, came up with the idea that the state is unable to do its job for the first time. The National Party never did that. Mbeki never did that. The person who came up with this idea and implemented it, and we live under this idea of an incapable state that must outsource its job to big business, is Ramaphosa. And that is what the GNU is doing. So now ports are going to be outsourced to the private sector. The ports that were successful before, ports are going to be taken. This country has had in history, since we were born, some of us, ESCOM has won world awards, being run by civil servants, being top #1 in the world, run by civil servants. A lot of our research, CSIR, Human Sciences Research Council, are recognized worldwide and have been so for some time. But now, all of a sudden, we don't have capacity, we don't know anything, everything must be handed over to big business. That is the GNU. I do not, when I articulate my position, talk about things that cannot be measured. That's my training background. I only focus mainly on the things that can be measured. Jobs can be measured. I mean, people there, I'm in the WhatsApp group on my road. This morning, I was checking, the grant says, hey, my pump, the pump for drawing water underground is not working. Is the three-phase electricity working? Right? So all these guys, every day I see them complaining about electricity, complaining about water, complaining about this. That's why I'm off-grid, right? So when I talk about these things, guys, don't get the wrong impression that I'm short of electricity in my house. I'm not. I've always got enough. Water, I've got enough. So I talk about these things for academic purposes and for building the nation. Thank you very much, Chair.
Enough electricity, but you had to take our resources. Thank you so much. Comrades, please give him another very warm round of applause. That was quite fiery. And considering that it's only been a year of this government of national unity, he does not paint a very positive picture of the future, which should really worry us, because we are possibly stuck with this GNU until the next election, which is in 2029, and that's a long time for children to go hungry. That's a long time for black young people, black young able people to remain unemployed. And it's also quite interesting that 30 years later, colleagues, we've not allowed us the possibility to think beyond elections, right? It seems every new election, we are given hopes that something different will come. and yet 5 years later, nothing really comes and the gimmicks keep going. The question remains, how do we, think beyond elections? And I hope the following speakers can also help unravel that question. Our next speaker on the program is listed as Ms. Kekeleto Khena, who is a social activist, and unfortunately, she had a family emergency this morning. And please do not fault us for not having a gender balanced panelist. We did try our best attempts, but as you know, this is life and things happen. And so she sent an apology, and her apology is acknowledged. I will therefore call the next speaker, which is David Litswalo. He's the director at the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public International Affairs, and he wants to share his reflections on the so-called GNU in the Rainbow Nation, a liberatory response. Ndate Litswalo, over to you. Can you please give him a round of applause?
Thank you, Program Director, Mafrika Zandi. I really appreciate this platform. The acting executive dean of the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs, Professor Edith Paswana, and the COD of the Department of Political Science, Dr. Hwane, our guest speaker, Mr. Sandile Swana, members of the diplomatic community present here, all colleagues and students at the University of South Africa, members of the audience present here, and those who are with us virtually. Africa. Good morning or good day or whatever it is. So I'm really privileged to share my views on this theme of coalition in South Africa a year later. I will, however, approach this from a liberatory perspective while giving an opinion on the discourse of GNU in this context of the rainbow that we have shrouded ourselves in since 1994. So I just want to say that my contribution will not be that scientific and sophisticated as was, but just to say that what will reverberate will be that which Mr. Sandile Swana has actually said. I was tempted to say after his presentation, I abdicate. But I appear on the program nevertheless. So I just wanted to make the following preliminary points as a point of departure. The first point is that we have not achieved liberation in South Africa. That's me, not you. So we have not achieved liberation in South Africa. So we are in a neo-colonialist or neo-apartheid situation. That is 31 years later. Number two, the rainbow conception is a farce and a myth. Number three, GNU does not exist. What exists is a coalition. And I'm mindful of what Professor Kotze outlined earlier on. And ultimately, number four, the importance of race consciousness when addressing issues of liberation, because colonization or apartheid are inspired by race or white supremacy, to be particular. So you cannot talk about liberation and forget the issue that it is a particular race that was oppressed and another race was the oppressive force. And in the light of what has been submitted here, we have had sounds of Frantz Fanon, Amilcar Cabral, and so on and so on. I'm very much happy and proud about these submissions. So, Kwame Nkrumah, in his book, Neocolonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism, and in the chapter where he talks about monopoly capitalism and the American dollar, he makes the point that, and I think Mr. Swana's idea about the role of business in hackneying our progress to liberation and transformation will align with this contribution by one of our greatest minds in Africa. So he says that, and I quote, "The end of empire has been accompanied by a flourishing other means of subjugation." So you might think that you have got liberation in 1994, but that empire continues by other means, maybe via whatever, GNU, whatever you call it, Rainbow Nation, rhetoric, and so on and so on. So, the recent visit to the Oval Office by the leadership of the so-called GNU raised a few curious points for me. Number one, who rules South Africa? I'm not talking about governing or being in political office. Who rules South Africa? Number two, our state of neocoloniality. Number three, the point that he who feeds you controls you. And then finally, the composition of that delegation of the GNU to the US, the way in which it was composed. I had a sense that the GNU is exactly what Mr. Swana said it is. Just want to say that one of the issues that led to that delegation visiting America was the issue of the land is being taken from wherever and ever. But the Minister of Land Affairs was not part of that delegation. Instead, the Minister of Agriculture from the DA was part of that delegation. At least that's what I saw. Then I want to come to this important point to say, which is a central question. Why do we do politics and elections and the like? But importantly, what was the struggle about? Why did we fight the struggle? So the struggle is about correcting the wrongs of colonization and apartheid. So liberation is at the core, or it should be at the core of our activity. So it should be more than just having systems of democracy, human rights, service delivery and reconciliation with our oppressors. But justice, equality, economic power and sovereignty or self-determination of a people, for me, should determine our freedom. I just want to also indicate that the Constitution of South Africa, for me, is not a tool for liberation, but rather is the tool to maintain the social order through reconciliation and adherence to the so-called rule of law, which essentially serves to maintain the racialized status quo. So, Mafrika Zandi mentioned something around trying to explore alternatives to the electoral politics. So what we've been doing since 1994 is to celebrate the right to vote and participate in electoral politics whilst continuing to live in a state of false freedom. We're celebrating reconciliation whilst we're still trapped in spaces of inhumanity, inequality, racial domination, exploitation, landlessness, poverty, and deprivation. And our guest speaker mentioned this point, the importance of land and the issue of poverty. So you cannot really align all these aspects with freedom. So there cannot be a talk of true and genuine liberation in the absence of economic emancipation and cultural power. So mere political power means the right to occupy political office without ruling the country. So my question, and I think I'll raise this quite often, do you think the GNU, as it is now, the so-called GNU, is a tool for liberation? In your honest space, talk to yourself. Do you think really this thing called the GNU is the tool or vehicle for true liberation? I want to also indicate that the rainbow dispensation has never been about liberation. Hence, it shouldn't be surprising that this constitution, upon which this electoral political system is based, makes no reference to critical words such as apartheid. You can check your constitution, you'll never find the word apartheid. You'll never find the word colonialism. And you'll never find the word repossession. You can read it from page 1 to the last. Why? People who were in the liberation movement, why did they not ensure that such words appear? So, but what is telling though in the preamble is that it speaks in vague terms about, and I quote, recognizing the injustices of the past. It does not say that we are correcting the injustices of apartheid and colonialism. When you say injustice of the past, what do you mean? You say it, injustices of apartheid and colonialism, and even slavery. And the Constitution also does not make reference to apartheid as a crime against humanity. But as we know, colonialism and apartheid are phenomena steeped in race. And that is why the person who kept on saying apartheid is not a crime against humanity was embraced by the ANC until the end. That is F.W. de Klerk. And I remember in one situation where people were saying he must get out of parliament because he keeps on saying apartheid is not a crime against humanity. And the ANC defended him in parliament. And I remember one ANC leader saying, de Klerk is not going anywhere. It's more like we are de Klerk and de Klerk is us. For me, the ANC government that is in political office spent more than 30 years celebrating the Rainbow Nation, Madiba Magic, and the culture of human rights without dealing with the notion of liberating black people, specifically the failure to repossess the stolen land. And in fact, the apartheid negotiators successfully managed to lock this discussion in the Constitution via, amongst others, Section 25. That is why, Mr. Swana, the issue of land will always be a problem. So instead of focusing on important issues, pragmatic issues that you referred to, black people in the so-called government are specializing in reconciling with the oppressor and also hating their own people. I just want to go back to the issue of race and politics in liberation. You cannot avoid the question of race when dealing with this issue because the identity of the perpetrators and beneficiaries of apartheid are glaring when it comes to the victims of apartheid. And these are important factors. I keep on getting this view, and I don't know why people don't get it. We get so drunk in reconciliation, rainbow nation, and non-racialism that when we're dealing with problems that affect us as a black race, we feel like we're politically incorrect. I will not tire to refer to one of the greatest minds in South Africa, Pixlika Isakaseme, who was even honored and acknowledged by Kwame Nkrumah, because Kwame Nkrumah used to say that, and intelligent as he was, he used to say that he doesn't quote anybody when he presents his speeches. But once he quoted Pixley Kasakaseme in preparation for the OAU launch. And he didn't quote only one sentence. He quoted the whole speech of Pixley Kasakaseme. And what I like about what Pixley Kasakaseme says is that he is conscious about race in our social existence. And he says, and I quote, "I set my pride in my race over against a hostile public opinion." He's clear like that. As I go towards the end, I just want to make a few points, really. Sometimes last year, in a roundtable discussion themed, "Do governments of national unity and coalition work in Africa?" That was last year, in this building. Professor Toyin Falola likened the coalition configuration, that is the so-called GNU, to a polygamous marriage, with the ANC marrying all these wives, or parties. The way it is, the DA has been a senior wife, and its behavior has been accordant. If you look at the behavior of the DA, it aligns with the behavior in that sense. So, and somehow the other small parties have accordingly behaved like the junior wives in a situation of escape. And particularly for ANC, Nyala Unyele. So what the DA is doing to the ANC is basically the consequence of escape, as Professor Falola has indicated. But Falola makes a profound observation that coalitions are about power sharing, and also that power sharing is connected with corruption, because it's about allocating authority and resources to yourselves. And that's basically something that was said even earlier on. And that's me, that's not me, it's Professor Falola. So, in fact, the coalition government in South Africa, the so-called GNU, has the effect to blur the lines between the oppressed and the oppressor. And this becomes an excuse for assimilation and related tendencies. You may call them selling out. So, if the so-called GNU is a path towards liberation, why are the DA and the Freedom Front Plus, for instance, embracing it? Perhaps Mr. Swana gave us an indication in that sense why they won't get out of it. Or why is the DA agreeable to a coalition with the ANC if the ANC is a liberation movement? But the DA is quite happy. So I think from today's submissions, particularly from Mr. Swana, we can understand. So the coalition government configured with the DA as the senior wife is problematic, as it gives an illusion of unity and a fantasy of freedom and equality. The coalition government is part of the whole game of electoral politics and democracy that rests on the manipulation of numbers in the guise of the will of the people. Hence, there has been an emphasis even in the media pushing the narrative of GNU rather than coalition or grand coalition in the national space. A coalition government is what is and not what you simply call it. So if you are in a coalition government with the DA, just say so. Because if you call a horse a goat, that does not change that horse at all. So a coalition is what it is, not what you choose to call it. But I know why, because it is embarrassing for a liberation movement to be in coalition or alliance with an oppressive force. So what you need to do, you invite other parties to sanitize and legitimize that unholy alliance. And that is why you have parties such as the PAC, with one seat given a Ministry of Land Affairs. And therefore, if you follow the PAC sentimentally, you will think that, yeah, this GNU so-called is for liberation. And I want to say it is totally not. And even if you can come and argue that Robert Sobukwe or Steve Biko would have been happy to join the GNU, you need to be read thoroughly in your mind as to what's happening to you. Very, very important there. So, my question is, does a liberatory project stand a chance under the present political arrangement of coalition government, the so-called GNU? I don't think we should dream of having liberation for as long as we are in this kind of arrangement. I'm particularly averse to the trajectory from the negotiations with the white oppressors since 1994. I'm not sold to the so-called rainbow nation. I believe that we should stick to the politics, because I have a sense that the politically changes. So let's look at the composition of the GNU, for instance. As I conclude, it seems to confirm some of the things that Mr. Swana has indicated. How do you take the education of a black child and outsource it to the DA, for instance? How do you take the identity of the nation, that is the population register, and give it to the DA? How do you take agriculture, if you don't believe that, we don't have the stereotype that it's only white people who can farm, and give it to? So a nation that cannot feed itself, that does not take care of its agriculture, is a defeated nation. At which point do you decide, now I'm giving the agriculture to Steenhuisen? As an example. But now the world is under IT for IR, and you take that ministry that can manipulate elections, if you go digital, and you give it to the DA. I'm just saying. But I have a sense that there has never been appetite for liberation since 1994, because if you check, the ANC has had decisive majorities over time. And what did they do with it? And even now with this thing of expropriation of land without compensation, like, you didn't have to have this problem had you used your numbers properly. So the lie of unity in the GNU is not about uniting the nation. After all, we are not a nation. In my view, it is about the allocation of positions, as I've already indicated. Hence, Falola says coalitions are connected to power sharing and corruption. And he further says politics is a business of betrayal. And that's what he said. So we have become so complacent in our condition, so that we tend to think that service delivery is liberation. And we think that BEE and tenders is liberation. We think that the right to vote is liberation. And we think that getting seats in parliament and cabinet is liberation, and it's not. In conclusion, I want to say, the moment the ANC decided to get into bed with the DA ignites for me reflections on Robert Frost's poem called The Road Not Taken. That moment when you decide, not that you are selling out, but that moment when you decide to say, I go with the DA in a coalition arrangement, and you leave others, So for me, that's a very, very important point. So Robert Frost in that poem, and I want to quote, says, there were two roads that diverged in a yellow wood, and then I took the other as just as fair. Oh, I kept the first for the other day. In other words, the one that would avoid the oppressor in the arrangement. But towards the end of the poem, he says, I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. So, in other words, these shenanigans around the coalition government and the so-called GNU and the role of business and the like will be judged by history somewhere ages and ages hence. I was tempted to look at the definition of the word sell out. And somewhere it says about betrayal of one's principles, usually for selfish or expedient reasons. So I'm looking at the so-called black parties, the so-called liberation movements, what they're doing or they've been doing since 1994. What has been their principles? I'm not saying anybody has sold out, but I'm just saying the definition of sell out. My role was just to give a liberatory response to the address, not to give a speech. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Lizwalo, for that thought-provoking almost speech that you gave us. Thank you so much. We are now have eaten into our absent colleagues' time, and I discovered that I've been too generous with time, but it's okay. We are led by the GNU, so we'll conform. Africa Advocate Sipho Mantula, without wasting time, I'm going to call you up, and you are listed here as a researcher, but also as a legal mind, and I hope you can take us into some of the legal, contradictions that we find ourselves in the GNU context. Africa, I have 20 minutes. I will sit there with papers. Just keep your eye there. Can you please give him a round of applause?
Tjaleboga Zandi Nyabonga Enkosi molweni dumelang sanibonani, and thank you for being part of this community Indaba and a dialogue. Where does one start after listening to three minds and coming from a legal response? And I think Prof. Derek Kotze spoke about it earlier. But let me start where it will end, but also looking at our communities of practice that are here, that the legal mind normally will pose questions, but will think about the future. But also before I pose those questions, I thought of this album of the Wailers, Survival, Ambush in the Night. And this song of the Wailers is very important because it says, see them fighting for power, but they don't know the hour. So they bribe with guns and spare parts and money, trying to belittle our integrity. They say what we know is just what they teach us, and we are so ignorant. This is very important line of Robert Nesta Manu, say ambush in the night. I'm not ambushing you in this afternoon or in the morning, but I'm just saying to you, and understand that transition of this country from apartheid to democracy had a short moment. We are trying to say the GNU of 1994 was a success because it used the interim constitution of 1993, particularly section 184 then. And that's where there was clear allocation of seats, who will be ministers, who will be deputy ministers, not a bloated cabinet that we see now. And secondly, you'll understand it was what I'll call, it was a short moment, 94 to 1997. So it didn't last. And it was like what you have said, Prof, actually, when you say you have GNU when it is in the time of crisis. But I don't think the moment of 93-94 was crisis. I think it was a moment of political pressure and a legal pressure that came from all liberation movements and international community. Because the freedom and the liberation of this country was not achieved by one political party. There were efforts, communities, the mass democratic movements played that role. But when we look also, we are talking about GNU bringing political interest, responding to a crisis. Where do you put the national interest here? Here you have political interest and you have business interest. Where do you put people's interest? We'll also say the GNU has been formed on the basis of nation building, social order, peace and stability. But we see in our own communities, pre-94, post-94, instability, there is wars going on, community protest. We don't see the nation building, but we see a nation fragmentation. Now, you will understand, colleagues, that Constitution is very silent. The final Constitution of 1996 just talk about composition of the state, both the national, provincial, and local government. But it doesn't give you a clear understanding. Even the Electoral Act might say that after 90 days, after those days that you have mentioned, Prof, that 14 days after election constitute government, but also there was a need for a fresh elections because it was the electorates that pushed political parties to go to this coalition. If you look at the constitution, like I have said, there's a hybrid version of what we'll call parliamentary government. Professor Mokgobe Ramose always contests the question of constitutional democracy and parliamentary democracy. That it seems that politicians used constitutional democracy to hide, and parliamentary democracy was much better. Because if we say it was the people's parliament, you really say it was people's representatives, not deployees. Now we might look at this phenomena that we have used in terms of the law in the past, what has happened. But in short, we don't have a law that regulates coalition in this country. The law that is being planned and that has been drafted and muted now is for local government. Only now. And that for local government, it is now showing in 2026, we might have the same scenarios. But there is a law that has been muted, that has been drafted, there are issues around it. But I wanted to go to those questions, and I will deal with this statement of intent, which has 28 articles, 14 pages, and Prof is talking about 240 pages, 151 days, and here we are talking about it took them a few days, and the role of business, I think it is correct, and I don't want to say it is on record or off record, particularly bankers, investors. They were calling all the negotiators during that time in 2024 to say that alliance of the left and of the right, you must be careful. But what are the key questions that I want to ask to you now as we are moving to have community voices? I think the issue is there a way to regulate coalition governments more stable? Because the law cannot prescribe to political representatives how they must vote or to the electorates. The law cannot do that. That's why you have a freedom of choice. The law cannot determine the negotiators of the statement of intent that was planned last year. It cannot. You cannot have a law say, negotiate in this manner. There may be aspects of how the law can be used to change or to reduce instability. But also, like I said, we have frameworks, guidelines that can regulate coalitions at 3 spheres of government, at local government, provincial, and national. The effectiveness of this coalition also must be tested, as all of you are already tired of this national convention and the national dialogue that is coming. But I think that's where we must find the voice in the national dialogue about how to ensure effective coalitions from local government to province and national. And that's where you can use the law there. But there is a need also to change the political culture in this country. The third question also is that are there best practices of coalition governments? And I think Prof tried to apply the European standard, the Western methodology. We know what has happened to Zimbabwe, we know what has happened to Kenya. They've not worked, actually. Lesotho, our kingdom of Lesotho. And that's where you have the serious challenge about how to ensure the best practices. And the last one, what role do voters have in coalition governments? I think we have never get into that sense of looking at the role of electorates. And that's where it is important that do electorates participate even in the IDPs? When you in your local municipality you have IDP processes, do you engage? You know, those are the issues that I feel that are the missing points. Now I rush quickly to the statement of intent. There are few principles that troubled me a bit when I was going through it. And I think, like I've said earlier, the 1994 GNU was under the interim constitution. But the 2024 GNU was not under a constitutional grounding. It was not grounded. So one can say, how do we look at that statement of intent? I'm looking at Article 23 where this is a good process, what we are doing of reflecting. GNU has to have what they call consultation council. This council has to monitor the progress and the program of the 7th administration. Remember that number 7, it is a perfect number, but it is also the 7th clash. It is a year of famine, it is the year of plenty. Are we in the year of plenty or are we in the year of famine in this country? So the number 7 is a very powerful number. We have 7 days a week. Huh? So it's a very powerful number that you need to grapple with. So this consultation council will be also tested in the national dialogue. What progress have you made? The second aspect, the Article 20, which we have raised, which is of legal in context, the deadlock breaking mechanism. And I think we saw it with the budget vote, how they were a bit struggling around it. The land bill that was passed last year, there was a challenge around it there. The issue around even how DA perceives itself on foreign policy, that they can go to the US anytime. Their views on Russia and Ukraine, their views on African conflicts. And these are the issues that in the statement of intent, it was looked under priorities. The issue around sufficient consensus, I think some of you will understand it, 93, 94 debates in this country. How do you define sufficient consensus? I think it is also a very technical term, but in terms of the statement of intent, they've used 4 subsections around it. It is when parties have opportunity to engage. It is where there is to find the common ground. And they are also raising it on this current document that there are issues around where the parties who are represented, like you have used that analogy of 60%, 40% and 20%, the AHC and the DA. And that any party that doesn't agree could formally object. That's how they will reach sufficient consensus. But like I said, it's a technical and a legal terminology. The second aspect also that I looked on the statement of intent, I think I have covered it, but I said the mooted national convention and dialogue, it is in the statement of intent. And it is important for us as communities of practice who are interested into participation in elections, that we need to engage at the local level on electoral reforms. Accountability by your ward councillors. It's very important. And when I look into it, it is talking about developing a national compact. Very problematic. They've tried in 2012 when there was an issue around Zuma being attacked, and Zuma said, let's create a social cohesion. That's a social compact, but there is no social cohesion. We are not cohesive in this country. We are not. I've said it before, the foreign policy, issues of human rights, it's like we are going back to the Mandela era of the foreign policy, multilateralism, and I think all the GNU members, they need basic 101, honestly speaking, on foreign policy. They don't understand the foreign policy of this country. And our foreign policy also is bit diluted. Coming from African Renaissance to Ubuntu, but you go to the document, you find Ubuntu on the last page of the foreign policy. Then there's no Ubuntu. It's like what Prof. Ramusel said, and commercializing Ubuntu everywhere. There's Ubuntu everywhere when there is no Ubuntu. On the statement of intent, I've also seen the important part. How do we strengthen effectiveness of parliament? There are ministers who don't go to parliament in this country. They just defy to go to parliament. So how do we, like we know in this GNU, there are many ministers who have been skipping going to the parliament. So that's another legal question about representation. The other aspect which is said, we said it has to strengthen the law enforcement agencies to deal with crime, corruption, and gender-based violence, and deal with national security capabilities. Problematic. The president removes the state security, puts it in his office. Shumela Venda, Pele. No? So Shumela Venda, if you see it, it is also lacking knowledge. You know, that Shumela Venda strategy of a person who wakes up and says there is an attempted, there might be a coup in this country. I don't know, Makati, who is advising that woman, actually. I don't know. You know. And then you have a debacle of Richard Mdluli coming to haunt us again in the crime intelligence and Becky Trele. Again, we are going back to that era of how do you address crime when criminals are the same police? Police and thieves in the street. Police are the thieves now, are the criminals. That's very problematic. And the question of gender-based violence, you can't say it is even pandemic, we have to deal with it when we know very well that it's something that it should have been dealt with long time ago. And I think finally, when I look on these programs, they are saying stabilize local government, effective corporate governance, the role of traditional leadership in the governance framework. We are struggling. The Traditional Court Act, me and my colleague, Mr. Ramala, who's having another community project, we are struggling to take this Traditional Courts Act to go and engage communities of practice to say, but do you understand this law? And what is the role of traditional leaders in this GNU also? I think those are the issues that we should tackle with. And like I said, the effectiveness of local government already, for me, that is a legal concern and security issue. You want to have a national dialogue during electioneering of local government. That is very problematic. People might go to those dialogues to campaign others. Others might go there to even protest and even rebel against it. So for me, the timing was not proper. And I think finally, as I close, Andy, I'll go back to that song of Robert Nesta Marley again, of ambush in the night, but this time it's ambush in the day. As I've said, that song, it says now, remember the last paragraph I said was that it was around us being ignorant, that what we know is what they have taught us. But now, every time they can reach us through political strategy, they keep us hungry. And when you're gonna get some food, your brother has to be your enemy. ambush in the night. So these lines are very important also. Is the GNU a political strategy, or is it an aborted political strategy? Is it the issue of keeping people ignorant or hungry all the time? Because the issue that I've raised, you have a ministry that have 3 ministers, defense, 3 ministers, DTCI, 3 ministers, international affairs, 3 ministers. That's a bloated cabinet. It's got chief of staff, it's got VIP protocol. Don't we think these are the issues that are going back to what Brother Sandile was saying in terms of measuring the issues of looking at the real situation? To say, but there is hunger, there is poverty, but people are having lucrative benefits, traveling. The deputy president is traveling left and right. He's now in China. Tomorrow he's in Russia. Huh? So you have things that I think are very important for this Indaba to say, are we going to have ministers and deputy president and president who's always traveling and not dealing with the issues of explaining what Zandi you were saying earlier, that there was a need for a political reorientation of understanding coalition of governments at the local government, provincial government, and national. And finally, you know, the lawyer will always say finally, in conclusion, in summary, there are 7 provinces that we don't see GNU. And Prof has mentioned it. It's KZN and Gauteng where we see GNU. I think Northern Cape, Prof. No. Northern Cape we don't. So you have 7. And the legal challenge it is that you will always have the issues around how do you deal with succession, how do you deal with committees in the parliamentary level. And that's why I say that even if you have KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, these are bigger provinces on our GDP, by the way. And that's why also the issues of insecurity, instability, and the issues of the coup or no coup by Makatsi that he raised, he pointed to KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, those are the issues. So for me, I think that will be my sentiment, that from a legal point of view, it is that the legal men who are watching us or who are listening here, there is still more to do in terms of our contribution, debating and engaging on that. There are some legal lacunae, loopholes, potholes that we don't see. How are we going to be closing them down? Asante sana Africa.
Asante Sanam Africa, Sipho, thank you so much. I think the speakers have, from Untate Sandile, spoken almost in one voice, painting the GNU as, I think, a symptom of something, right? And I'm hoping the communities here represented will speak to that something, because it's clear that we are trying to respond to a symptom and not the root cause of the problem. Let me get my names correctly. Mr. Calvin Kunene and Mr. Midu Bipalane. There's too many misters here. Too many misters, comrades. This is why even the discourse is junior wife, is Tembu, And when you think about that, the version of his Tembu, what we know, is very problematical because it's colonial. It's not founded on matriarchy, which is the indigenous discourse of African relations. This is why when you get married, you take muligani, umlingani, you don't take a junior anything, but that's a conversation for another time. Ma Africa, are you here? Can you please proceed to the front? Please come to the front. I want to see you thoroughly. Both of you, please. Can you give a how, you guys? People ask. You can take a seat. One of you, you can sandwich the prof. a Russian anarchist writer, they call her. I think her name was Emma. I tried to Google now, but I couldn't find it. Gave us a very famous quote, and I'm talking to the community. She said, if voting changed anything, it will be illegal. They would make it illegal. I'd like to hear what you guys think. We've had the academics, the legal scholars, the professors. Now we are handing it over to not just the basics, the foundation, because the politicians are meant to be our servants as the people. So we are handing it to you who are appointing them. All the best.
Thank you so much, Program Director, Ms. Andy, Professors, Mr. Swana, Dr. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Calvin Kunenev. I'm from Mabopane. The GNU, if I may start, because I know time is important, so I don't want to waste time. So the Mabopane group that we came with today is representing various groups. We are from the sector of ICT, others are from agricultural space. So the basics for us in the GNU, we are not happy with people that have been elected into like positions of responsibility, like your ministers, deputy ministers, because after all, they are our representatives. They represent us. We are the one that elect them to go to provincial, national, to represent the community. So the GNU, the Government of National Unity, we are not in support of as a community. Reasons are very obvious, is that we are, where we come from, we see a high level of crime, which is all for everybody to see. People are not happy. You can see even on the current news what is happening. So the issue of crime is high on the agenda in the community. So we wish that the powers that be, like your ministers, we appoint them, but ultimately you vote for a certain party. That party, like for an example, like last year we had 40% ANC and other MIPA, so they choose themselves. So we want to see a fair representative, even if they can have what is called some sort of after election, what they call crisis management committee that can represent the communities where we come from, so that they can know. Because if you go to Mabopane and speak to an elder and say, do you know what is a GNU? I don't think you will get a clear answer. But GNU, and you have to now explain what is a GNU, and then but I didn't vote for GNU. I voted for EFF, I voted for DA, So it's important that when such a situation arises, we should be able to go to the ground, to the voters themselves that have appointed these officials from their respective parties. Because when we vote, we don't vote for GNU. Our political system has been perfectly outlined by the professors that were here before me. So it is important that they set up a committee that can go to the ground and explain. Because again, if you look at our voting patterns, a lot of young people, they don't go to vote. So it's important that you conscientize them, and it must go to the IEC. There's not enough education that is taking place to conscientize the youth about the importance of voting. So it is important that when you say you are a government of national unity, can you please simplify it to the very basic unity of the communities, even it means speaking in all our linguistic languages, all our official. We now even have the 12th one, which is the sign language. Explain it to them so that they know what is this GNU all about. Because you now are now told that there's a minister who's from the DA, then there's one from the ANC, and then people don't know these things because they are not part of the decision makers. They just go on the voting day, they vote for a certain party, they vote X, and then they leave. What happens, how many percentage they will get, those parties, they are not sure. They just want to see or wish that party that they can be able to, that they voted for them, they can be able to win and get as like Professor Derek Kosa was just showing, 50+1. So they want the majority. So of course, we have seen Professor Mantula, Advocate Mantula, you were saying that, of course, it's not the first time we see the GNU, and then of course, Mr. Swana, the senior analyst, was saying now, earlier this morning, that it's been there. But has enough consultation taken place to the communities where these are the voters? For instance, people are not worried about who's a minister. People, when they vote, they just want basics: water, electricity, potholes. Recently, now we are seeing, now we know it's end of financial year. Now we start seeing the government machinery working. Where we come from, even this morning, other parts don't have water. So you expect people to know what is a GNU when they don't have water. They don't care about GNU. They just want water, electricity, attend issues of school. Those are the issues that people are concerned about. For an example, in our community recently, there was an incident in schools where a young boy was bullying another one, and of course it led to one being killed last year, October. Of course, it was handled with the district officials, and of course the MEC of Gauteng, Matumo, was also there in Mabopane. So these are the issues that parents are concerned about. The high rate of crime that is in schools, we are now seeing a new pattern that is taking place now in schools, where parents, they know that, I'm in the education sector, if I may still, maybe 1 minute. I've got a developing educational app called My Career Trends. We go to schools, we do those things. We are seeing a high rate of betting in schools. People don't know this. Kids, some of them, they have smartphones, they do betting in schools. So there was an incident in Hammanskraal where kids were fighting, they even stepped one another. I'm not mistaken, did one pass away? I think there was one who passed away because of betting. So we are also want to drive, while we are driving this campaign of our educational gap, we also want to take social issues like illegal betting and gamification, which is now what parents do. They give these young ones lunch money. They take that money to bet on their behalf, because remember, some of them, our parents are technologically challenged. So it's a big issue. Kids are fighting in schools. So we need to address this. And I'm not sure whether they know, even some of the officials, it's becoming a problem. Gamification and gambling in schools is taking place. And parents don't know this. So those are the basic issues that we want ministers and officials to really address, because those are the basic issues that people want. Those are the challenges that people want, like resolving the issues of billing. In some cases, you find that one house is being built twice with different, say, names, but same, number, address, rather. So those are the issues that people are concerned about. Job creation is an obvious one. We know what needs to happen, but of course, when you are not a part of a councillor's favorite, you don't get even to sweep the street and all those things. Those are basic issues that should be addressed. And again, if I may emphasize that we are seeing, as we move around piloting our educational app, we are seeing a really a disturbing picture of young girls now starting to do, sell themselves. So those are the issues that they must be attended to, because those are social ills. And of course, last financial year, we know what happened. The Gauteng MEC returned about 800 million to the fiscus, of which those are the social issues that must be attended by the Department of Social Services to attend to these issues. We also want you as UNISA to work with us and partner with us, so that we can be able to attend to some of these disturbing issues that are taking place in schools. Because remember, if you disturb the fabric of schools, we don't have schools. The security that is being in schools is not the correct security. Things are being stolen, laptops, and so these are, I know Premier Lusufi now is driving the issue of these specialization schools, but there's not adequate security. Adequate security is not there, and then now you want to put technological equipment into those schools. What do you expect is going to happen? They are going to be stolen, obviously. So these schools
issue that must be attended to. As far as the issue of Wi-Fi in schools, is also, we have just read recently that 87% of schools, they don't have access to Wi-Fi. And then we expect these kids to be technologically savvy to compete with China and the best in the world. So the issue of government of national, if it can address the basics, get water, get enough facilities that are functional into communities. Your libraries, you go to Mabupane Library, even today, it's been over, I think, over 4 years, we don't have access to internet. Yet we expect kids to study into those libraries. And it's shocking that to the extent that even when they have to study, sometimes there's no water, sometimes there's no electricity. So we would love them local level to attend to this, because there is budget that has been passed for these facilities to be functional. So those are, people are not worried about big issues and your tariffs, and they don't know what is tariff, some of them. So you can't go to community mobile and say, talk to elders about tariff. They are worried about basic issues. Those are the issues that we would like. And also on the issue of the specialized economic zone, we've got lots of young people that have got ideas, businesses. But you've got the specialized zones in Zone 15 in Harankua is closed. Of course, those are the facilities that can be allocated to young people who've got business ideas, who want to drive impact, change, and jobs. Those are the issues that people are worried about, jobs, basics. So we are really wanting to push that. Those are some of the issues that should be attended at the local level, particularly municipalities. They must get their act in order and address the basics, because if we can't get the basics right, I mean, we're not going anywhere as a country. Things like your infrastructure that is decaying in schools and illegal dumping. When you come to a township, the only thing that you have to see that you're in a township is as you come in illegal dumping. Those are the issues that people, as you go around, you ask the various communities, they are worried about that. Of course, when you talk about GNU in a bigger scheme of things, with issues of political parties, I think they need to realize that they are there on our behalf. They're not there to serve themselves. So I don't know what mechanism can be found for them to understand and realize that the more time they take bickering to one another, it takes a lot of time for them to make sure that the service delivery is taking place in the communities, because those are the issues that are really outstanding. We want to also address the issue of clinics. Our clinics in our various communities are not in good state. They are filthy, they are not being cleaned, and those are the basics that we want community members to address. As I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I also, we're passionate about young people. From our areas where we come from, a group of us, we need support, and we think that the UNISA has got capacity and the necessary know-how to address some of the issues that we want to raise. We will take up those with you as we head to a networking session. So I want to take this time, thank you so much, Prof. Paswana, for giving us the opportunity. I know we met you last time when we were on the other side. I think we were here in April during Miriam Makeba's function. Yes, so thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah. I want to thank this opportunity given to us as a village or as a community to say our voice in this important gathering, also sharing the space with professors and the people who knows. Allow me to mix my language. Ne? I want to mix because I want to benefit other people who cannot hear my Silovedu. Yes. Kalivicho Kimitupi, Ora Palani. I come from Limpopo in a town called Zanini. Zaneni, I live in a place called Tabine Ramogoboya. Our town has 35 wards. And just about 3 of them do not belong to the ruling party. And I come from one of them. I'm giving you this information because I want to zoom directly into challenges facing our village. Because I also come from Moshate. I represent a tribal office as well. So, with our challenges, one that we see as a village, that we saw as a ward to actually change from the ruling party or from whoever was ruling us, was that the education, the voter education system that they taught us was biased to them. They taught us how to vote, how to cross on the ballot paper, not necessarily what are we voting for. So people out there, they don't know the reasons, the actual reasons for them to go and vote. Hence, the low turnout of votes every year, they decrease. You can see that. The trend is going down. I come from the same place as well. We were very fortunate to be located by this university to help us, empower us, whatever touche, which was phenomenal ya service delivery, le GNU, le coalitions. Necessarily where I come from, we don't have coalitions, because I come from Zanini, Limpopo. We don't have a GNU there. It's 100% one party rule. And that is our problem. It's our problem because then where I come from, my office, I work with the person who represents our tribal office into the municipality. And those people don't get to make decisions in that municipality. They're only there to participate, not to participate. Because they're only there to sit and get speeches and get stipend. But in terms of the real impact of our community, it's not visible, it's not realized, because they're not given a voice. I come from a tribal office where even the president never visited. From Jacob Zuma, Mbeki, you name them, even the current one has never visited my place. I come from the place where to see a parliamentarian, you must go to other villages or other areas. They don't visit us. Although we have a constituency office nearby. Abatli, what I will do. Abatli, what I will. So village arena is so remote in such a way where Indaba UNISA to help us empower those people. Advocate Mantula Dilogore now, Rakona establish a group, the villagers, just to begin to empower that particular community. About that feeling, ultimately what you want to drive. You know the feeling again. Like I said, we don't have a GNU, we don't have a coalition. Marayar affected because district model. That district model, the government that this we are told, they never came. The government that this the services, they bring the national department, the provincial department, and also the district plus the local. But apparently, what is happening, I can say we are on autopilot. abathi batho ba. But then it's affecting us because if they were to bring Minister of Agriculture, they'll bring Steenhuisen. If they were to bring Minister of Culture, they'll bring Chavisa, Langushishagar. So we are also affected indirectly so. Ka taba ya GNU, you call it GNU agar rena yo gozanin. All right. Kemuka intongwer warisoga mother in our village is the IDPs. In those IDPs, we participate as communities, bring in good and valuable inputs, but they don't get to be written and they don't get to be implemented because but a different thinking of how they should give us service delivery. In my village, actually where I come from, we have the so-called water schemes. Water schemes, the communities formed themselves into little committees to bring water for them when there's actually somebody who's getting paid to give us water. So the community is so much self-reliant, such that even the clinic that services our people was built by us as community, not government. You can understand where I come from. And I'm happy that UNISA brought us here to say this. I wish you brought somebody from the so-called GNU, we tell them themselves here, Reina, how we feel in those communities. I don't want to bore you much with the desperations in my village, but we want to say we will work hard with Mantule for change the situation in our village. And please, Professor, if you happen to meet the president and Paswana, you meet a lot of dignitary people, tell them we don't have a clinic. Amen.
Roving mics, can I just see? Ke batla ho rebuka go leboga wa bona yonong kilobedu saka sia nshia but ke batla go leboga ntate Kunene le ntate Palani for just coming here and reminding us exactly what is at stake, because sometimes we do forget behind the ivory towers, and we appreciate that some universities, especially the University of the Land, UNISA, does make some efforts to reach out to communities, but we are not your saviors. I think I need to put that, very clear. Communities are far more capable, because you say you've built yourself a clinic. That for me is commendable. And I don't know why the audience didn't clap when you said that. Those of us who live in the township who are under GNU have far more worse problems than you are. So you might look at us and think just because we are under GNU and we have councillors living on our streets, those who still live in the township anyway, because once they get elected, they leave us. So our problems are the same. So instead of looking up to us, keep doing what you do. Because ultimately, I think the rural community is really what could lead us out of poverty, unemployment, because you still have, the capacity to do for self. You've got the ground, you can plant, you can feed yourself. We depend on ShopRite and Pick and Pay. So don't look at yourself from a disempowering perspective. Colleagues, Africa, the floor is open. We are just going to have reflections, show of hands. We'll take one over here. I'm looking for women. We'll take one over there. And the gentleman over here in that order, please. And can we get the roving mics? Is this the only mic in the room? Can you please bring it this side, Africa, so that it can go back to him and then it'll come back here. Please keep your comments, reflections to the point. Agir Ma Africa, to the point.
Yes.
Not another presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Program Director. Let me stand so that greetings to everybody. My name is Strike. I'm from Mabupane. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the presentations that were made, starting from Prof. Paswana, Prof. Kotze, Mr. Sandile Swana, Advocate.
Chief, you are doing my colleague's job. He'll take everyone. Just get to your point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Program Director. My questions are, I think, two, if you may allow me, Program Director. One, I think I will direct this question to Mr. Swana, because in your presentation, you would try to elaborate on a statement of intent. But I would like to know that in the 9 principles of statement of intent, if there is a conflict, which they were, and it seems like they will continue being there between the ANC and the DA, particularly on certain reforms, typically to the budget, which we have seen now. What do you think it should happen in terms of conflict resolution over and above the statement of intent which they've issued? Because it does not seem to be legally binding, that statement of intent. Number two, this one I'll address to Prof. Kotze, because you touched on the various GNUs across the world. Why
So not GNU's coalitions, Akir?
Yes, thank you, Prime Director, for clarification. Why don't in South Africa, we don't have a two-party state? And the reason I'm asking this question, I like the explanation by Professor Kotze when he spoke about the two-party state in Britain, the Conservative and the Labour Party. Because in South Africa, we've got over 500 parties. It's unnecessary. It's costing us a lot of money to print ballot papers and so on. Can't we have a two-party state or a three-party only? Because parties are mushroom left, right, and center, and so on. I mean, where are we going? Why can't we reform the IEC? Just to have 2 or 3. That's it. Thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. You must be fast, comrade. Over there, please. And then you come back all the way. And then I'll hand over to the panelists to respond.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Look, mine is just a...
Rise, Mzansi, so that we see you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Program Director. My name is Mkolis Malinga from the Directorate of Student Admission and Registrations and Sunnyside Campus. Mhlekazi Swana, siyabulela mhlekazi ukufika kwakho uzosixelela inyani singakabhubhi. You know, Mr. Swana, you and Mwafrika Litwalo, what you've said, it pains me because I'm one of the people who fought for the liberation of this country. I was in the trenches. I survived from the Flag Plus under Eugene Tikok, who's still alive, who used the Askaris Mochuma Masela to infiltrate our group, where the Mamelodi 10, my comrades were killed. I'm the sole survivor. Now, it pains me a lot that this, what you call it, the so-called GNU, Mr. Swana, is non-existent. It's an arrangement between the master and the slave, right? Mwafrika Litwalo said something that, you know, there was a day when the master came to parliament and the slaves defended the master and said, no, he is us, we are him. It's just like the house slave. Remember, when the master's house is burning, the house slave will say, our house is burning. You know, at the same time, when the master is sick, it is the same house slave that will say, we are sick. So really, this thing that's happening is just a pipe dream. The liberation that I fought for with my comrades and others in this country is this one. Ayikafiki mhlekazi. Ikude, it's still a pipe dream. Maybe zakwenzeka, but wena nolitswana ngokuthetha inyani isivula amehlo. Ndiyabulela.
Thank you for, that was a comment. Of course, you'll be free to respond. I'm not going to jump the line. This is not the ANC. I'm going there and then coming back to you, Prof. I'm sorry, I've not bought into the GNU. I've noted your hand, Prof.
Well, thank you, Program Director. So, or it's David Ngubuka, maybe resident researcher, HSRC, UMISA, UP, UG, VIT. So, yeah, my question was, I think maybe comment the predictabilities, maybe the ballot issue. It will be still interesting to see how also the independent candidates would have maneuvered within the ballot development as the single movements. So, yeah, project director, yeah, the litmus test wanted to understand. We thought this GNU, by this time now, would have came up with the motion of confidence, maybe, to protect the public, as the public protector would have thought as much. So, for that issue to say, yeah, man, advocate the issue, how do we gonna match? I see the fumbling of the president's decision, absent leave that, absent leave this. How now we gonna measure the left wing of the GNU, the right wing of the GNU? Seems like now the later AfriForum becomes the right of the left, DA becomes the left of the right, MK becomes the left of the right. The issue. Yeah, because for instance, yesterday we attended the policy brief, the Institute for Security Studies. So, yeah, the future of the Special Investigation Unit continues to recover plundered funds, close to 8 billion, which has caused the gap for public service delivery and stuff. So, do we have communities that check prior? Is prior before GNU or GNU after GNU? What's going to be the job of the Special Investigation Unit? Because we saw the Organized United Friends of the Oval Office organizing their United Financial Obligation to bidding for the Starlink that was proposed to enroll internet in the rural schools. Naledi, thank you very much. Shushu.
Thank you, Chief. I'm gonna hand over, before I invite my panelists, I'm gonna give Prof. Paswana. Does she have a mic?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. I have a question for Ntate Swan. And a question, I think this comes from the presentation around the question. I think he's the one who was talking about capacity. We hear that there is no capacity. Even we are going out to private interest. And I'm concerned as well because they say, if you look at the start post-1994 or after 1994, you realize that a lot of capacity left government, either willingly or unwillingly. And I'm saying willingly because there were people who might have left for business interest and wanting to hollow out the state through tenders and entrepreneurship, and because they saw those private interests that you were talking about that made people to leave government, and then obviously a lot of black people were coming into this government with nothing, with little experience of governing as well. And then you have those who also left forcefully because they were they were also a push to make places for black people, if we are being honest with ourselves about what was happening. But the painful thing is when we see that many of those whites who left government, and either forcefully or willingly, you also see how there was no willingness to help the black government work as well. And today we are all suffering from those kind of decisions where people also left government incapacitated, with sometimes with people competent and incompetent as well. And when you a best case is when you look at the Western Cape government and the narrative that the Western Cape is working. It's not because there is a magic government in place in the Western Cape, but it's simply because business is supporting the Western Cape government and is investing in the Western Cape government. That's why the Western Cape government also, you see that things are happening. You have people who are helping with sanitation, with water, with all of this in the Western Cape government. And the narrative now becomes that black governments are incapable. Because when you look at how business is no longer helping in the municipalities where the government is black, or let's say ANC, for instance. But you'll see that where business is supporting the government, where there is this coalition of business and government, you see that certain things are happening. I just want you to reflect on this observation that I have seen, I've been observing for quite some time, on how business in this country is operating as well, and also leading to the collapse of the state, and whether intended or unintended. And I also wanted
Professor, now you are compromising me, please.
Okay, let me finish this because I have two questions. And I think this is a space of discourse. We need to talk. There's no more hands. But what I wanted to say, the gamification, somebody was talking about the gentleman from Mabopan. Yes, was talking about games, gamification, and gaming problems in the schools. And I think as parents, we are all parents as well, sometimes we expect a lot from government to do something. Right now, our children are on phones, interacting with people we don't know, and doing this. Some of the work, it has to come from us as parents to assist the government. Because this thing of games, it started at home, we left it, that now it's in the schools. And then we are raising hands, and then we want to say, government must come and help. So I'm just appealing that as a black community, there are certain things we need to take responsibilities for and sort them out. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Prof. Godze, I'd like you to begin first because you have one question from the gentleman over here, and then Mr. Swana, you can then proceed in that fashion. Thank you.
Good. Thanks very much. This question was about the two-party state. Is it not working? Okay. The question was about the two-party state. To be honest, I don't think there's any example where there's a country just with two parties. What we see is countries where two parties are dominant. And I think what many are thinking about will be like the US, UK, who else? There are not many. And if you look at those countries, there are actually many more parties, but they are not prominent. You know? For example, I don't know about this last presidential election in the US, but the previous one, there were actually 8 candidates, but we knew only about 2. You know? So, and there were other parties also participating in the different types of elections, Senate and the House of Representatives. The same in the UK. Actually, the UK had once, not so 10 years or so, had actually a coalition with the Liberal Democrats and I think it was the Conservatives. You know? So the idea of a two-party system is actually, as I said, it doesn't really exist, because the idea about this is that parties tend to develop splinter groups all over the world. You know, if you look about, well, we are a good example ourselves in South Africa, but if you look at many other, then we have countries where we have one dominant party. Tanzania, you know, CCM, Japan. The Liberal Democratic Party is for more than 45 years already the governing party. For a very long time, the Indian Congress Party, and Mexico the same, and the Social Democrats in Scandinavia, especially in Sweden. And then in Southern Africa, SWAPO, ZANU-PF, Frelimo, and the others. But it's changing. If you look at those, even our neighboring countries, in the metros, the opposition is starting to become very prominent. Some places they are even in government already. So it is what we are doing, what our situation is we move from a one dominant party system, the ANC, now to something completely different, of a sort of a fragmentation. Maybe it's in response to that. I think we are going to stabilize sometime in future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the advocate there is busy carrying paper baskets. It would be good to resolve this question on conflict resolution. Let me then, I'll give him to him. But I want to deal with your question directly, Professor. You know, there's a mistake, I think, that is happening in South Africa. It can be a mistake, it can also be dishonesty and propaganda. If you look at measurable progress and productivity before 2008, the state was actually productive. So 2008, when you measure the gap in years from 1994 to 2008, you actually see the statistics improving. After 2008, there was a decline, right? And the decline came out of the decisions, some of them made in Polokwane, and some out of the practices that Jacob Zuma and his friends started to introduce and got deeper with, what's his name, Cyril Ramaphosa. So the Afrikaners and the white people in South Africa, before 2008, bear in mind that I went to do my MBA at the University of Pretoria in 1996, among Afrikaans professors. They would say openly that we've never had it this good. The white Afrikaners have never had it this good. It was really happening, and they made a lot of money, the white Afrikaners in South Africa. And there are others who've confirmed that. However, all of these groups, they were javelins. They are black people who were occupying senior positions in the state. They would prepare a company outside and then leave his job here and go and join that company and make money from the state. And white people did the same. Okay? So that is normal human behavior of immorality and other problems that we need to look at. I don't actually have statistics or accurate data on the extent to which Afrikaners, white Afrikaners or whites in general were kicked out of the government. What I do have is the concern that I have where highly qualified and experienced black professionals have been kicked out of the state. That is my problem. As an example, the managing director of the SA Mint, where money is being made, Andile Mvinjelwa, BSc Engineering, Mechanical Engineering, MBL, University of South Africa, 3 degrees, highly qualified, highly experienced, trained in the private sector, and then became a CEO in a public-owned entity. Got kicked out for spurious reasons, including wanting to be co-opted into corruption. And his career was damaged from that. Advocate Maite Madasa, Secretary of the African Parliament, performing very well, doing an excellent job, but when Msholozi wanted to expand his operations into the bigger Africa, he kicked him out because he was an obstacle. And there are many others, young and old, black professionals who have been abused. So I want to put it to you that the incapacitation of the state has gone hand in hand with the brutalization of black professionals. Conflict resolution in the GNU. Sufficient consensus.
Yeah, I think that one I did try to deal with it, that there is a conflict resolution structure or way, but it is not grounded in an African context. That is my view. And why am I saying that? It is because of what has happened even with the budget issue, with the debacle of the the deputy minister removal from the office, how it was being treated. But I think the issue is that, as one of the community members spoke about, the crisis management committee, I think the issue, it is consultation that should have been dealt with even before drafting that document. And we don't know even the drafters of statement of intent, that dispute resolution, it is very important, but it must be grounded with community concerns and experiences. And I think that's where we had a serious challenge. I think the 1994 one, how the late President Mandela dealt with it, was the issue of allocation of seats through constitution, and say that it will not be musical chair debates. There are many chairs there. They can fight over them. But with the GNU of 2024, it was the tussle of ministries, that others wanted finance, others wanted foreign affairs, others wanted defense. So it was highly contested, because that's where they know they can have persuasion. But the dispute resolution mechanism, as we are going for the national dialogue, it should be grounded in an African practice and African culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Mafrika. I am led by Professor Paswana. She said there were no hands, so now I'm just going to proceed. Oh, there are hands. Oh, really now? Colleagues, please keep your comments, slightly to the point and brief. Where's our roving mic? So can I see, I'm going to take women only and young people, of course. I'm going to take my 2 sisters in this order, sister here, sister over there, and the 2 young people here. Oh, wait, young people, wait. The sister right at the corner there, and then the 2 young people here, and we close it, Ma-Africa. Thank you, in that order.
Good morning. My name is Mutlalepule Malike. I'm from a foundation called Teboho James Malike. It's in the memory of my late husband. I also work for the Department of Defense, but I'm not here in that capacity, just so we're clear. I've heard everybody comment, and I appreciate, well, I'm not going to be able to name anybody by name, but what I picked up from it, Kure, we know that there is problems. But also, as a young woman who was raised in a village, I know when we come together, we make things happen, irrespective from where we are. Mabopani, I'm inspired, and Tate Palani, I'm sure I'm inspired. All I'm saying is that if we don't wait for somebody from government to do something like the people in Zanin did, we are more than capable. I've recently read, I'm going to finish up, I promise. I've read the book for the 2nd time this time. It's called Capitalist Nigga. I know it's a very old book. It cannot not make you want to do something. If you have a chance, if you haven't, it's over 25 years, but it's still relevant today, which is the sad part. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. Good day, everyone. My name is Nobile Mnisi. I'm from the South African Bar Association. And with regards to land claims, the Land Claim Court, along with its other partners, held. It gathered all the legal practitioners in South Africa, calling that there's a backlog and they need assistance. And we discovered there at Bowman's that Norton Rose Fulbright is actually handling most of the land claims cases. And here you are calling us as black legal practitioners along with others to deal with such a matter. It was held in December, but since then, it has not, we have not been called again. But here we have Norton Rose Fulbright dealing with the matter. And in addition to what one of the other panelists spoke about in schools, to gambling, add gangsterism. There's a high rise of gangsterisms in schools. And it is horrible, and it's not being discussed. It needs to be curbed with immediate effect. And yes, I concur with you, Mr. Swane, when you discuss flats versus homes. I was with my sibling the other day, we were driving around, and I was very disturbed that South Africans are owning flats, and foreigners are in homes. What kind of government do we have? It does not exist. And to the panel, I would like to pose this one. What is your views on the G20? What is the purpose and what is the use if we do not have a government? Who's going to speak on our behalf? Thank you, thank you. Oh, that, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Dumalang, everyone. Linalaka Kintabi I'm from Frontline Africa. I have a comment inspired by a program director when she asked where the woman at. So I'm like, here I am. Okay, so looking ahead, I know that today's session we're reflecting on the GNU. However, I don't think we should let this moment pass us by, particularly when we take into consideration that next year is the local government elections. 1 in every 3 municipality is in a coalition of some sort. And what does that mean for us? I mean, there's a community leader that mentioned that some of the challenges that at a community level, they relate to the socioeconomic matrix. So how can we stay ahead of the curve, inspired by Mr. Sandile when he spoke about how capital is sort of, they are ahead of the curve in a sense that they are consolidated, in a sense that they are united, whereas with the voters, there's a lot of fragmentation, even at national level. I mean, how many recent political parties have registered in just a short period of time, and what exactly are they selling if we can narrow it down? So I do concur with the sentiments of narrowing down. But my point here is, how can voters stay ahead of the curve, thinking in or looking into the local general elections, especially when we take into consideration the role of municipalities in fostering service delivery? Thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Tato Mazo Madibo. I am a young aspiring, sorry? Oh, okay, sorry. I'll just hold it like this. It's on 2 things. Good afternoon, everybody. As I said earlier, my name is Tato Mazo Madibo. Thank you for having me. Straight to the point with my question, I just want to quickly lay out some context, fast. The English in the 1800s and into the mid-1900s, their politics gave them wealth. The Afrikaner politics gave them wealth as what was previously known as the poverty of the Afrikaners. They liberated themselves. But what has black politics done for us? Over the past 30 years, we are still struggling. Even amongst us as black youth, we don't know what we want. We are here in the room, but it's a convoluted conversation, also us. We don't know what we want as well. Now, my main question here is that the fragmentation of opposition politics is very clear. And I think after last year's election, it has imploded the conversation in terms of our politics. So what is my question? What is the evolution of black politics? And what is the genetics of black rhetoric that we can move forward in terms of not just young people, but bringing unification for black people? Because it's a funny thing when we always talk about black politics. I'm kind of mirroring what Ugogo Mashikri said on Sizwe Mpofu-Grawus's podcast. He also said himself, we tend to talk about black politics and think that that also mirrors the identity of black unity. But they're two different things. So how can we fuse these things together? In my last quick sentiment, if you'll allow me quickly, Chair, I just want to say, I did actually write a paper on the political economy with elite capture, etc., and it's currently being published with the University of Ottawa in Canada. And I want to just concur with you, Mr. Sipo, that I definitely agree with, and a lot of my findings on that paper. We did find a lot of corruption, as particularly within the early 2000s. It's very clear that policies did not work for us. But likewise, you touched on foreign policy. Our foreign policy is as old as 2011, if many people in the room didn't know.
Chief.
Where are we going? Thank you, Chair, thank you.
Thank you so much. Love the fire, thank you so much. Just before you go, Mafrika Sipo, can you please entertain that question? Mafrika David, this question from my sister here, so that Africa Swana can have a breather. And Africa Swana, you can take the fiery question. I think that one was fire. We fight fire with fire. Yes, my brother, you can proceed.
Greetings to all. My name is Tirelezo Makudu, and I am the representative.
The mic is too far from.
My name is Tirelezo Makudu, and I'm from Morunga Foundation, and also representing the BLC Youth Movement. My reflection on the critical reflection on the coalition in South Africa, presents at most challenges for the future of its citizens, particularly the youth. For example, cuts to social spending and the compromises may lead to reduced funding for essential services impacting education and welfare. Short-term focus if the GNU prioritizes power, maintenance over structural reforms, critical issues like youth unemployment remains unaddressed. This illusionment failure to deliver meaningful change could result in apathy amongst citizens, particularly the youth. In conclusion, I would like to say the GNU success hinges on its ability to implementing policies that genuinely improve the lives of South Africans, especially the youth who are vital for the nation's future. Thank you to all. Thank you for this opportunity, especially to the UNISA. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother. So Africa Sipo, you'll start, and then David, you will follow, and then Ndatu Sane, you'll close. I think that was a comment. Thank you very much. And I will not take any hands. I have to allow my colleague to wrap up and take us forward. Over to Mafrika.
Thank you. Zandi, I think it was mostly of the comments that came from the floor than questions, but the question that the sister is still trying to summarize.
You are doing my job, are you aware? Hey,
no, there is
no, just
there
address the question.
I am trying to deal with it, this question, Zandi, because I wanted him to maybe summarize it in short. The issue of the voters, advancing socio-economic rights, I think I did raise it earlier on my questions about what then is the role of voters in effective governance. I think the role of voters is not only to attend political rallies only as the youth, but is to also hold leadership accountable. That's one aspect that we have failed in terms of attending community meetings. And secondly, I think on your question that aspiration of the youth, they are also on youth participation. And one of the challenges we had since 1994 is the youth leadership. But the 2024 cabinet, we have seen many young people in the cabinet from the presidency, but most of them, they are only advocating a party political stance. And that's the fear that we might be going into. That the youth who are into leadership, they don't represent actually the youth interest of this country. Hence we have NYDA that is not even constituted today. And that is the fear of local councillors also who are young people, but they are not responsible to even engage with the traditional leaders. The issue that you are raising finally on socio-economic, I will add cultural rights. I think one of the issues that I've raised earlier, political culture and identity of this country is very key. And I think it will be shaped by the young people who are in this room. We cannot talk about preparing the future for you. You are the current, present generation that must shape your future. It cannot be shaped by 65-year-old or 70-year-old MPs in the parliament. In this country we have the youth parliament, and that youth parliament, I don't know what is it all about. Is it just ceremonial or window dressing? I think it's very important for the youth of this country, for the young people who are here, to start to engage on the politics of elections, politics of representation, and politics, like I said, of conflict resolution. Because that's where we are today. And this national dialogue also, the youth must engage on these issues that we have raised today. I don't want you to come here and say it was a parachute, it was a hit and run debate. I think we have more opportunities as a young people. And the role of social media, it is the issue around the disinformation and the misinformation that I will urge you to guard against. Because social media has that tendency of making you to become robotic and you are not practical. So that's how I will raise that issue in terms of how can voters deal with this issue. And it will be through the ballot, not through the bullet. It will be through the ballot for you to make change in your own community.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mafrika Zandi, I think there was a comment this side. I don't want to go there. However, I want to talk about this issue of black politics or black parties, because most of the problems that were articulated here hinge on that issue. First, I want to indicate that the so-called black parties or politics that were swallowed in a political system, there must be a time when we disrupt the system and come with an alternative, a point that was made earlier. Number two, on the issue of what is the black party, by the way, it's a problem because most of the so-called black parties are not essentially black parties. If I found and fund a political party as a white man and I put a black face there, do you call that party a black party or a white party? So that's a very good problem, and it centers on what this charade of coalitions is doing. You think you are actually voting for a black person, whereas you are indeed voting for a white man. The other point that I wanted to indicate about this thing that we praise people when they are struggling in a village, they're building their own clinics and all that, you think, yeah, you're doing right. Actually, it's wrong. The state belongs to the people, and those resources belong to the people. So you can't be bailing out people who have resources which belong to you and they don't use it on you. And then here we sit and say, yeah, you're doing well, you're doing well. That is the state resources. It means the people's money, the people's resources. That is my perspective in that. And finally, to address most of these issues, we must realize that we mustn't be complacent as black people. We must be vigilant, that we must understand what power is. And we must take it and use it for ourselves, and stop being assimilated. If you look at Parliament and count one by one, black faces there, absolute majority, there are few white people there, but the agenda of the government is anti-black in my view. Thank you.
I suppose I'm the last speaker. Thank
Please.
you. So, the first thing, I must go back to you, Professor Paswan. I think I forgot something. In a measured way, when you do the quantities, I don't subscribe to the fact that the DA is successful where it governs. For instance, the Western Cape, Cape Town, or Midvaal, that sort of thing. The problem that you are faced with is, as I have said in public before, if you and I were to go and write an exam and you get 15% and I get 10, the pass mark is 50, and you run up and down all over town telling you beat Sandile in the exam, but we are both failures. So I could discuss that further out of here, but I don't subscribe to that view. Coming to this issue, if I've understood you correctly, I'll put it this way. Sobukwe says that there is only one human race without a subspecies. In other words, saying that in scientific and biological terms you are a white person, that is a fraudulent statement. You are misleading people. Steve Biko, who would have traveled, one of the persons that I've listened to who was clarifying the issue of non-racialism was Stephen Biko. In as much as I spend most of my time in the ANC, the clarity on non-racialism, I got it from Sobukwe and Steve Biko, not from the ANC. So this is the issue then. The issue of being black, who is black? Bearing in mind that in the United States, people over time have graduated from being black. The Irish were black at some stage. The Germans, like Trump comes from the people who were originally black in the United States. So black is about inclusion or exclusion from white privilege. So when I say BEE must be continuous, it must never stop, what I am then saying is that in a properly constructed society, people must be removed from disadvantage and equality must be created. You might not call it BEE in 10 years' time, but the idea that there must be people who are insiders, others are outsiders, others are in privilege, others are in, and so on, that is the central question. So I don't care, because a lot of the sellouts, Malinga somewhere there, talked about the sellouts were black, were sold out in the struggle by so-called black people. So being progressive is not a matter of complexion. Being progressive is a matter of a system of thought. And the last thing I will say to the young people here is that where we are today, we need to define as young people, I'm not included there, you need to define the political operating system of South Africa, the model, the economic model and the social model that disregards whether you are wearing a red t-shirt or a green t-shirt or a blue t-shirt. It must belong to the nation. Like the Nordic countries have got a Nordic model. We don't have a model here. It's everybody trying to mark everybody else. Others are saying we must go and grab the Makwere-Kweres. Others say we must go and rob the African.
Order. There is no Kwere in Africa. Please. Thank you so much. Without wasting further time, I'm going to invite my colleague, Mukutso Mfudzi, who's going to give us a summation of the conversation and a way forward. Remember, this way forward is not only informed by, the different voices in the space, but it comes from a university. So take it with a pinch of salt. Please, Ma Africa. Yes? You can clap for her as she... Now you must leave. So you can come to the front and wrap up while they leave. Professor, is it just you who's leaving? The executive colleagues. The executive that was taking our time has to be excused now because there's an urgent meeting that they have to attend to. Thank you very much. As they make their way out, you can proceed again, my sister. 5 minutes, Akira.
Yes, thank you very much, Mwafrika Zandi. And I must admit that this dialogue was very much necessary and very much significant. So without any waste of time, in summary, I would like to first start by acknowledging and appreciating the TM School Executive Dean, Prof. Pasano, for her warm welcome and opening remarks, where she mentioned the importance of multilingualism in this kind of setting. Prof also enlightened us by indicating to the youngsters that Musho wa Mutlakanelwa started back in the 1980s. Therefore, it is significant for all of us to go back and reflect on this GNU generation. Prof. Dirk Kotze's presentation gave an extensive GNU theory into context. Therefore, today we know the history of the GNU and the different categories thereof. We have also learned why government is important, why coalition is important, and how it is formed. Ntate Sandile Swani, we appreciate your wide experience in your area of expertise. It is quite very much motivational. You really addressed issues of interest and those that are current, particularly the issue of crime, corruption, land reform, labor law, and others that you have mentioned. We hope that your presentation could reach those in power so that the whole conversation and everything that was discussed here finds an effective way forward. David Leswale presented to us his liberation perspective, which contained several questions that require researchers to engage on and dig deeper on how we can get to a point whereby we reach a point whereby we are a complete liberated rainbow nation. Advocate Mantula's presentation centered around a number of several issues, including ex-laws, active participation on issues of government, also issues of local governance, whereby communities of practice that are present here, I think now it is their responsibility to learn and go engage on their local government issues. Ntate Kunene from Mabopani, he has indicated from the grassroots level on his unhappiness of the elected GNU members. He indicated that there has to be fairness in representation and the importance of voters' education. So therefore, provision of basic services also came up as a concern. The same as Ntate Midupi's presentation. They have mentioned the challenges that come as a result of the absence of provision of basic services. Therefore, I think what we have all learned from this dialogue is a plea to the GNU government to show up and do really what is fair, right, and just for all South African citizens. Okay, lastly, I have an invitation here. The TM School is hosting a PDF seminar on the 29th of July. The seminar will be on illicit financial outflows and misinvoicing from the African continent. So everyone is invited, and I think I will give Advocate Mantula to just give us a way forward. Thank you so much.
I think for me, it will be just the one line. Prof. Paswan earlier spoke about that the intention of this project is to produce a book on elections and coalition of governments, but also our way forward is that let's keep this engagement online, offline, but also follow most of the debates that the school, political science and UNISA has been engaging on. I think that's how we will wrap it from here, Program Director, in that form. But like I say, the most important issue, it is beyond publication, but it is for engagement as the institutions of higher learning and communities of practice, because we cannot have knowledge that is in the books, but we don't engage with communities. So it is very important for us, and once more, thank you.
With those words, I'd like to thank everyone who's made part of this conversation, particularly the communities And when I say take everything that academics say with a pinch of salt, I'm mainly saying you must be critical in your thinking, because on the one hand, the same person from the same university will commend you for taking your power and doing for yourself, but on the other hand will say you need to depend on the state, because the state is there to provide for you. So you need to be very critical and militant in terms of how we move. We are going to hand over gifts to our panelists. I'll take for those who are absent, thank you very much, but please, Sipo, do we have a camera? Can you please stand so that we can show Thabo Mbeki that we are doing what you are supposed to do? And please smile so that he can know that, especially you, Prof. God, you have to smile for Thabo Mbeki. Can the communities please come collect their gifts? Thank you for coming all the way from Tzaneen to be with us. We appreciate your presence and sharing from your lived experiences. Are you getting a gift too? Can I give you a gift? Colleagues, food, I think lunch is served over there. And yes, do enjoy the rest of your day. This is the first but not the last reflection on the GNU. You've put your names down. We'll also reach out to you for further conversations of this nature. Give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Yeah?